Story 1. My brother's wife smirked at Thanksgiving and said, "Your parents only love you when you're paying their bills." My mom laughed and added, "You're not welcome unless you clear your brother's credit card debt." I stood up, smiled, and said, "You're right, and that's exactly why you'll never see me again." Their faces dropped when they realized they had just lost their favorite ATM forever. This happened over the past year, and I'm finally ready to share the whole story. It's long, but stick with me. The ending is absolutely worth it. Some details changed for privacy. TLDR at bottom for those who want the quick version, but you're missing out if you skip to it. I, 35 male, own a successful chain of fitness centers across North Texas, 4 locations with plans for 2 more by next year. We do about 1.2 million in revenue annually, and I employ around 50 people between trainers, front desk staff, maintenance crews, and administrative workers. Not bad for a guy who started with nothing but a GI Bill and a dream after getting out of the Marines at 23. But this story isn't about my business success or how I built my empire from scratch. It's about how my toxic, dysfunctional family tried to bleed me dry for years, and what happened when I finally decided to completely destroy them, instead of just walking away like a reasonable person would do. Growing up in suburban Dallas, my family dynamic was crystal clear from day one. There were 2 kids in our household, me and my younger brother Cameron. He's 32 now. Cameron was always the golden boy who could do absolutely no wrong in our parents' eyes, while I was permanently cast as the responsible one who never needed attention, help, or recognition. You know the type of family setup. Cameron got praised enthusiastically for tying his shoes correctly, while I had to earn everything through blood, sweat, tears, and perfect behavior. When I was 17 and a senior in high school, I was working 2 different part-time jobs after school every single day to save up money for a decent used car. I worked at a local grocery store bagging groceries and collecting shopping carts, and I also worked weekends at a landscaping company doing manual labor in the Texas heat. Meanwhile, Cameron got arrested for shoplifting video games at the local mall, and instead of facing any real consequences for his criminal behavior, my parents bought him a brand new Honda Civic to help build his confidence and self-esteem. When I asked where my car was after 8 months of saving every penny I earned, my dad looked at me and said, "You're more responsible and mature. You'll figure it out yourself like you always do." After high school graduation, I immediately joined the Marines because college wasn't financially possible for me. Our family was supposedly struggling financially and couldn't afford tuition. Meanwhile, Cameron magically got his full college experience courtesy of mom and dad's mysterious secret stash of money that somehow appeared out of thin air whenever their precious baby boy needed something important. I did 5 long years in the Marines, served 2 deployments overseas, and came back home with discipline, work ethic, and real-world experience. I used my GI Bill benefits to get a business degree while working full-time at a local gym chain, learning every aspect of the fitness industry from the ground up. I lived in a studio apartment that was basically a glorified closet, ate nothing but cheap pasta, canned tuna, and peanut butter sandwiches for 3 straight years, and saved every single penny I could to open my first gym location. Cameron? He dropped out of college after 3 years of constant partying, changing majors 4 different times, and maintaining a barely passing GPA. But according to my parents, that was just him finding his authentic path in life and exploring his creative options. By the time I turned 30, I owned 2 highly successful gyms, had purchased a nice house in a good neighborhood, and was systematically building real generational wealth. Cameron was 27 years old and had never held any job for more than 8 months total. His pattern was predictable. He'd get hired somewhere entry-level, work just long enough to qualify for unemployment benefits, then get himself intentionally fired and live off government assistance while looking for the right career opportunity. But guess who was still considered the family favorite? The guy who had never accomplished anything meaningful or productive in his entire adult life. Then Cameron met Jessica, and that's when our family situation went from merely annoying to absolutely insane. Jessica was literally every negative stereotype about materialistic, shallow women rolled into one insufferable person. She had fake chest implants, fake lip injections, fake eyelash extensions, and acrylic nails so long and elaborate she couldn't perform basic tasks like typing or opening car doors. She'd never worked a legitimate job in her entire life, but somehow always managed to have the newest iPhone model, designer purses worth thousands of dollars, and clothes that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. She attached herself to Cameron like a parasitic leech because he was stupid and naive enough to think he could somehow afford her ridiculously expensive lifestyle on his unemployment checks. And my parents? They absolutely loved her. because she was supposedly motivating Cameron to be more ambitious and helping him mature into a responsible adult. Yeah, motivating him to find increasingly creative ways to spend money he didn't have and would never earn. The girl also had the intellectual capacity of a houseplant. I remember one particularly painful family dinner where she asked me if my fitness centers were like Planet Fitness, but more expensive, and then proceeded to confidently explain to me how the fitness industry worked, based entirely on what she'd seen in romantic comedies and reality TV shows. This brilliant analysis was coming from someone who genuinely believed that cardio exercise was harmful to your health because it makes you too skinny and weak. About 2.5 years ago, the phone calls from my parents started getting significantly more frequent and urgent. These weren't casual, hey, how's business going social calls, but rather direct, Cameron needs help with his electricity bill emergency calls, or Cameron's car needs expensive repairs crisis calls, or my personal favorite recurring theme. Cameron and Jessica are having an unexpectedly difficult month financially, bailout calls. At first, the requested amounts were relatively small and seemingly reasonable. $400 here for utilities, $600 there for car problems. I'm not gonna lie, I helped out because I genuinely figured that's what family members do for each other during tough times, right? But every single time I transferred money to help them out, Cameron never once called me personally to express gratitude or explain the situation. It was always Mom making the initial request on his behalf, and Mom calling afterward to say thanks, like he was still a helpless child who couldn't handle his own communications. Then the requested amount started getting significantly larger, and the accompanying excuses became increasingly creative and elaborate. $1,200 for their deposit on a much nicer apartment because their current place was supposedly affecting Jessica's severe allergies. She wanted to live somewhere more Instagram-worthy. $2,800 when Cameron allegedly got laid off unexpectedly, which I later discovered actually meant he got fired for showing up 2 hours late 3 consecutive days while hungover. $3,500 when Jessica supposedly needed emergency dental work, which turned out to be purely cosmetic veneers because she wanted to become a social media influencer. The breaking point should have been last Christmas, when Jessica posted elaborate Instagram stories documenting her week-long luxury spa retreat in Scottsdale, complete with expensive treatments and designer shopping, during the exact same week that Cameron had called me crying and asking for $2,200 for urgent car repairs that couldn't wait. But I was still foolishly playing the good brother role like a complete idiot. The real wake-up call came 8 months ago, when I went to Mom and Dad's house for our regular Sunday family dinner. I walk through the front door, and Jessica is practically shoving her left hand in everyone's faces, showing off this absolutely enormous engagement ring that had to cost at least $20,000. "Look what my amazing Cameron surprised me with," she squealed like an overexcited teenager. "Isn't it absolutely perfect? I've been wanting something exactly like this for months and months." I looked directly at Cameron, who was desperately avoiding eye contact, like his life depended on it. 4 weeks earlier, he had called me crying genuine tears about needing $3,800 for unexpected medical bills, because he didn't have health insurance coverage. "That's quite an impressive ring," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Must have been a very significant purchase." Jessica giggled and did this ridiculous little hair flip gesture. "Oh, Cameron always finds a way to give me exactly what I deserve. He's so generous and thoughtful about showing his love. Yeah, generous with my hard-earned money and thoughtful about hiding it from me." During that same uncomfortable dinner, Jessica made several passive-aggressive comments about how some people just aren't relationship material, while staring directly at me with obvious judgment. I was 35 and single entirely by choice. I'd been too focused on building my business empire and securing my financial future to get serious about dating or marriage. But she acted like I was some kind of pathetic failure, because I wasn't married to someone who constantly spent my money. "Maybe you should focus less on those gym things and more on finding a wife," she said with this incredibly condescending smirk. "I mean, what's the point of making all that money if you don't have anyone special to spend it on?" My mom actually nodded in complete agreement, like Jessica was dispensing profound wisdom. "She makes a really good point, Alex. You can't work every single day forever." That night, lying in my own bed in my own house that I'd paid for with my own money, I made a firm decision. I was completely done being their personal bank account. Things got surprisingly quiet for a few months after I stopped responding to their increasingly desperate money requests. I genuinely figured maybe they'd finally learned their lesson about financial responsibility, or perhaps found some other gullible victim to fund their ridiculous fantasy lifestyle. I was incredibly, spectacularly wrong about both possibilities. Then Mom called exactly 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, and I should have immediately known something major was up based on her tone alone. "Alex, sweetheart," she said in that artificially sweet, overly cheerful voice she specifically reserves for when she wants something extremely important. "Are you planning to come for Thanksgiving dinner this year?" I'd been seriously considering skipping the whole thing entirely, to be completely honest. Every single family gathering felt like an exhausting theatrical performance where I was forced to play the role of the successful son who should be endlessly grateful for the opportunity to solve everyone else's financial problems and personal crises. But I made the crucial mistake of saying yes, I would attend. "That's absolutely wonderful." Mom sounded way too relieved and excited for a simple holiday dinner invitation. "It'll be so nice to have the entire family together for such a special occasion." The excessive enthusiasm and obvious relief in her voice should have been my first major warning sign. Mom was never that genuinely excited about holiday dinners unless there was some kind of significant hidden agenda involved. When I arrived at their house on Thanksgiving morning, Jessica answered the front door wearing what appeared to be a completely new outfit from head to toe that probably cost more than most people earn in an entire week. Her acrylic nails were freshly done with some kind of elaborate crystal and glitter design that must have required hours at an expensive salon. "Alex!" she exclaimed, with the most transparently fake smile I'd ever witnessed. "Oh my goodness, thank God you're finally here. We've been waiting and waiting for you to arrive." Red flag number one was practically waving frantically in my face. Cameron was positioned in the living room looking more nervous and anxious than I'd ever seen him in our entire lives together. When I walked into the room, he barely managed to look up from his phone screen, and his leg was bouncing rapidly, like he was extremely worried about something important happening. "Hey there, bro," he mumbled without making any eye contact whatsoever. Red flag number two was now joined by red flag number one in a growing parade of obvious warning signs. Dad was acting relatively normal, asking his usual surface-level questions about how business was going at the fitness centers, while Mom bustled around the kitchen, making unnecessarily dramatic gestures and movements. Everything seemed fairly normal and routine, until we all sat down at the dinner table with our plates full. That's when Mom cleared her throat in that very specific way and gave me that particular look, the exact same expression she used to give me when I was a kid, and she was about to ask me to do extra household chores that Cameron somehow always managed to get excused from doing. "So, Alex," she said, while cutting her turkey with almost surgical precision and deliberate movements, "Cameron and Jessica have some really exciting news they want to share with the entire family. Here we go with whatever elaborate scheme they've cooked up this time." Cameron shifted uncomfortably in his chair like he was sitting on something sharp and painful. "We're getting married next month." "Congratulations," I said, though something felt seriously off about the rushed timing and urgency. Why the sudden need to get married so quickly? "It's going to be absolutely beautiful and perfect," Jessica gushed dramatically with obvious excitement. "Small ceremony, just immediate family members. Very intimate and romantic." Mom smiled with obvious pride and satisfaction. "They found the most perfect venue possible. Very elegant and sophisticated." I waited patiently because I knew from years of experience that there was always a catch with these people. "The only thing is," Cameron finally said, while staring directly at his plate instead of looking at me, "we're running a little short on the deposit for the venue and all the catering expenses." And there it was, the real reason for this mandatory family dinner gathering. "How short are we talking exactly?" I asked, even though I already knew this was going to be completely unreasonable and outrageous. Cameron and Jessica exchanged one of those meaningful looks that couples share when they're about to tag team someone for money. Then Jessica leaned forward across the table, with this incredibly entitled smile that made my skin crawl with disgust. "It's honestly not that much money when you think about it," she said dismissively, waving her hand like she was discussing pocket change. "Just $22,000. I genuinely almost choked on the food in my mouth. $22,000? Well, Mom jumped in immediately, clearly having rehearsed this presentation. "When you actually break it down properly, it's really quite reasonable for a quality wedding. The venue rental is $6,000, professional catering is $10,000, floral arrangements are $3,000, and then there's the photographer, the musicians, the cake, and all the other essentials." "Hold on just a minute," I interrupted firmly. "You haven't actually paid for any of this stuff yet?" Jessica's fake smile got noticeably tighter around the edges. "We put down small deposits to hold everything, but all the full payments are due next Friday." I looked around the table slowly and deliberately. Everyone was watching me with expectant expressions. Like this whole elaborate setup was already decided, and I was just going through the motions before opening my wallet and solving their problems. And you want me to pay for your entire wedding? Not pay for it exactly, Cameron said quickly, trying to sound reasonable. Just help out significantly. You know, as a generous wedding gift from my successful big brother. Jessica actually laughed out loud, and it was honestly the most condescending sound I'd ever heard in my entire life. I mean, what else would you spend your money on anyway? You don't have a wife or children or any real family responsibilities. Your parents only love you when you pay their bills. The entire room went completely silent. Even my parents looked genuinely uncomfortable with how directly and brutally she'd just insulted me. I set down my fork very carefully and leaned back in my chair, staring at my mother. Is that true, Mom? Instead of denying it, Mom actually smiled and nodded. Well, if you're not willing to help family, then you can't come to family events anymore. You can't come unless you pay off your brother's credit card. The words hit me like a physical blow. After everything I'd done, all the money I'd given them over the years, this was how they really saw me. Not as a son or brother, but as a wallet. I stood up slowly, grabbed my jacket, and smiled back at her. You know what? You're absolutely right, and that's why you'll never see me again. The change in the room was immediate and dramatic. Mom's confident smile vanished instantly. Dad's face went white. Cameron looked like he'd been slapped. Jessica's smug expression faltered as she realized what had just happened. Their faces completely dropped when they realized they had just lost me forever. Wait, Alex, I didn't mean... Mom started, but I was already walking toward the door. Yes, you did mean it, and now you get to live with it. And I walked straight out the front door without looking back. For 3 solid weeks after that Thanksgiving disaster, my phone was constantly buzzing with incoming messages from every family member. Long guilt-tripping text messages from Mom about how disappointed and hurt she was by my selfish behavior at dinner. Multiple voicemails from Dad lecturing me extensively about family loyalty and stepping up when it really matters. Even several pathetic messages from Cameron, though he was mostly just whining about how I was ruining his special day and destroying his happiness. But the absolute best and most entertaining messages came directly from Jessica herself. This woman sent me literal multi-paragraph essays about how I was a selfish, bitter person who was obviously jealous of Cameron's happiness and success in life. She called me pathetic for being single at my age, strongly suggested I was probably gay, and finished with increasingly vague threats about how I'd definitely regret this decision when Cameron becomes wildly successful. The irony was absolutely incredible. She was calling me jealous while literally begging for my money to fund her expensive lifestyle and fantasy wedding. I carefully screenshotted every single message she sent me and saved them in a dedicated folder. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, all the messages stopped completely. I genuinely figured they'd either found some other gullible victim to fund their ridiculous wedding, or maybe they'd finally decided to have a much smaller ceremony they could actually afford with their own limited resources. I was completely wrong about both possibilities, as usual. 4 weeks later, my friend who works as a loan officer at a major regional bank called me with some very interesting and concerning information. Hey, weird thing happened at work today, he said casually. I saw your brother and his fiancée at our main branch earlier this afternoon. My stomach immediately dropped with dread. What were they doing there? They were asking about substantial business loans. But here's the strange part. They were using your fitness centers as collateral and financial references. My blood went ice cold. What exactly do you mean by that? They had official-looking paperwork claiming Cameron was a 50% business partner in your company. The loan officer who met with them was immediately suspicious because the documents looked potentially fraudulent, so they didn't approve anything. But I thought you should definitely know about this situation. I hung up immediately and called my business lawyer. After some investigation and research, we discovered that Cameron and Jessica had been systematically attempting to secure substantial loans all across the Dallas metropolitan area, using completely forged documents claiming Cameron was a major owner of my fitness center chain. They'd even created elaborate fake employment records showing Cameron as my director of operations, earning $85,000 annually. They were actively attempting to commit serious fraud using my business reputation, credit history, and financial standing. That's when I realized that these people had crossed a line they could never come back from, and I needed to completely destroy them instead of just walking away and ignoring the situation. I spent the next 6 weeks methodically gathering every piece of information I could find about their situation. I didn't hire any private investigators or do anything overly dramatic. I just started paying very close attention to details and asking the right questions to the right people in my network. First, I discovered that the wedding was definitely still happening despite their obvious financial problems. They'd somehow managed to scrape together enough money for a small ceremony at some budget venue outside the city limits. But here's what was particularly interesting. Jessica was telling everyone on her social media accounts that they'd chosen to have an intimate wedding and that certain people who weren't supportive of their love weren't invited to attend. She was actually spinning my refusal to fund their wedding as me being deliberately excluded from their special day. Then I uncovered something extremely interesting about Jessica's background. My banker friend mentioned that Jessica had visited his branch several months earlier when she and Cameron first started dating seriously. She'd attempted to open a business account for some multi-level marketing scheme, and during the standard credit check process, several major red flags had appeared on her financial history. I asked him to dig a little deeper into her background information. Banks share data with each other, and he owed me a significant favor from when I'd helped him get an excellent deal on gym equipment for his home workout room. What we discovered was absolutely incredible and eye-opening. Jessica had quite the documented financial history with men. She'd been married before, not once but twice previously. Both times to men with substantial money and assets, both marriages lasting just long enough for her to gain legal access to their financial accounts and property, and both ending in extremely nasty divorce proceedings, where she walked away with significant portions of their assets while claiming various forms of emotional and physical abuse. Cameron was going to be husband number 3, and he had absolutely no idea about any of this history. But that wasn't even the most interesting discovery I made. The most fascinating part was what I learned about their current financial situation through various sources. Remember all those emergencies and unexpected expenses that Cameron had been asking me to help with over the past 2 years? Well, those emergencies were real in a certain sense. Cameron had been getting deeper and deeper into serious debt, trying to maintain Jessica's ridiculously expensive lifestyle and spending habits. But instead of cutting back on expenditures or having honest conversations about money, they'd been taking out payday loans with outrageous interest rates, opening new credit cards constantly, and borrowing money from anyone who would lend it to them. They weren't just regular broke, they were catastrophically, devastatingly broke. The kind of financial situation where you're literally one missed payment away from losing absolutely everything you have. And Jessica? She had no clue whatsoever about their real situation. Cameron had been desperately hiding their actual financial condition from her, while frantically trying to find new ways to keep the money flowing and maintain the illusion of financial success and stability. That's when I realized Cameron wasn't just the spoiled golden child anymore. He was completely trapped, probably terrified, and definitely in way over his head with a woman who would completely destroy him the instant she discovered he couldn't afford her lifestyle anymore. So I decided to dramatically accelerate that inevitable discovery process. The wedding was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in February. I obviously didn't attend the ceremony, but I had much more important and strategic plans for that weekend anyway. You see, I'd spent several weeks carefully putting together a comprehensive information package that would change everything. Screenshots of Jessica's insulting text messages calling me pathetic and jealous. Complete copies of all the fraudulent loan documents they'd attempted to use with my business information forged on them. And the absolute crown jewel of evidence. A detailed background report on Jessica's 2 previous marriages, her well-documented history of financial manipulation and gold digging, and complete documentation of their current catastrophic debt situation. But I didn't send any of this damaging information to Cameron directly. That approach would have been too easy and predictable, and he probably wouldn't have believed any of it coming from me anyway, given our family dynamics. Instead, I sent the entire comprehensive package directly to Jessica's mother with detailed explanations. Here's what my thorough research had revealed about Jessica's family background and situation. They were legitimately old money wealthy, but absolutely obsessed with social status, public appearances, and family reputation. Her father was a successful investment banker at a prestigious firm, and her mother was one of those high society country club women who cared more about maintaining their family's social standing than anything else in the world. They'd been financially supporting Jessica for years without question, but they were operating under the impression that she was in a committed relationship with someone financially successful and stable with good prospects. They had no idea that Cameron was completely broke and drowning in debt, and they definitely had no knowledge whatsoever of their daughter's well-documented history of systematically marrying men specifically for their money and assets. I sent the complete information package to her mother with a simple, straightforward note. I thought you should know exactly who your daughter has married and what kind of financial situation she's actually gotten herself into. The wedding ceremony took place on Saturday afternoon. By Monday morning at 8 a.m. sharp, my phone was ringing insistently. It was Cameron, and he sounded more completely destroyed than I'd ever heard another human being sound in my entire life. "Alex," he said, and his voice was literally shaking with raw emotion. "I desperately need to talk to you about something extremely important." "What's going on, Cameron? Can you possibly meet me somewhere today? Please? I'll pay for coffee or lunch or whatever you want." He sounded so completely broken and utterly defeated that I almost felt genuinely sorry for him. Almost. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near my main gym location. When Cameron showed up 30 minutes later, he looked like he hadn't slept properly in several days. His eyes were completely bloodshot, his hands were visibly shaking, and he kept looking around nervously like he was afraid someone dangerous might be following him. "She's completely gone," he said, without any preamble or greeting. "Who's gone?" "Jessica. She left me permanently, took absolutely everything valuable and just disappeared." I raised an eyebrow with genuine curiosity. "Everything?" Cameron nodded miserably. "All the wedding gifts we received, the money her parents had given us for the honeymoon, even our security deposit for the apartment. She cleaned out our joint bank account down to the very last penny and vanished completely." "What exactly happened over the weekend?" "Her parents called her early Sunday morning while we were still at the hotel. They'd somehow gotten incredibly detailed information about our real financial situation, about my actual employment situation and our debts. They flew down here immediately and had this massive, screaming confrontation with her in the hotel lobby." Cameron ran his hands through his hair frantically and repeatedly. "She tried desperately telling them it was all lies and misinformation from jealous people, but then they started asking very specific questions about money, about my employment history, about all our credit card debts and loans, and she suddenly realized the complete truth about everything. She realized you're completely broke and have been lying to her. Worse than just broke. We owe over $50,000 in credit cards, payday loans, and personal debt from friends. Her parents immediately cut her off financially and told her she was completely on her own from now on. And Jessica," he laughed with absolutely no humor whatsoever. "She looked directly at me and said, 'I definitely didn't sign up to be poor and struggle,' and just walked out of my life forever." I sipped my coffee calmly and waited patiently for him to continue with his story. "Alex, I'm completely screwed beyond repair. Like, absolutely and totally ruined beyond any hope of recovery. The apartment rent is due this week, all the credit card minimum payments are due, and I literally cannot make any of them. I'm going to lose everything I have left. What about mom and dad? Can't they help you out?" Cameron's face completely crumpled with shame and embarrassment. "They don't know how catastrophically bad the real situation actually is. They think I just need help with a few monthly bills and regular expenses. If they knew the actual truth about everything," he trailed off helplessly, "they'd be disappointed in you. They'd completely disown me forever and never speak to me again. You know exactly how Dad feels about financial irresponsibility and poor life choices." I almost started laughing at the incredible irony of the situation. Dad claimed to hate financial irresponsibility above all else, but he'd been directly enabling Cameron's terrible decisions for years and years without even realizing what he was doing. Cameron looked up at me with the most desperate, pleading eyes I'd ever seen from another human being. "I know I've completely messed up everything in my life. I know I've been a terrible brother to you for years. But I'm literally begging you, Alex. Please help me one more time. I need your help more than I've ever needed anything in my entire life." "How much help are we talking about exactly?" $50,000 minimum. Maybe 60 to get completely clear of everything and start over with a totally clean slate. I leaned back in my chair thoughtfully and studied his desperate face. $60,000. To clean up a disaster that should never have happened in the first place, if he'd made even one responsible decision. You know what, Cameron? You're absolutely right about some things. You did completely mess up everything, and you have been a terrible brother to me for most of our adult lives. His face fell with crushing disappointment and despair. But more importantly than any of that, you've been a user and a parasite for your entire adult life. For years and years, you've treated me like your personal ATM machine that exists solely for your benefit. You've never once asked how I'm doing personally or professionally, never offered to help me with anything whatsoever, never even bothered to say thank you when I bailed you out of your various messes and crises. Alex, please, I'm literally begging you on my knees. I'm not finished talking yet. My voice was ice cold now. You married a gold-digging manipulator who insulted me repeatedly in our parents' house and then tried to commit serious fraud using my business reputation and credit. You've spent years systematically taking advantage of my success while contributing absolutely nothing to this family except constant problems, drama, and financial emergencies. Cameron was openly crying now, with real tears streaming down his face. I know. I know everything you're saying is completely true. I'll change totally. I swear on everything holy. I'll get a real job immediately. I'll pay you back every single penny with interest. I'll do whatever you want me to do. No, you won't change. I stood up and put on my jacket deliberately. You know why you won't actually change? Because you've never actually had to face real consequences. Every single time you've screwed up your life completely, someone has been there to fix it for you without question. Mom, Dad, me. We've all been enabling your pathetic, irresponsible behavior for decades. I looked down at him, completely pathetic and broken in his chair like a defeated child. So here's exactly what's going to happen moving forward. You're going to go home and figure this entire mess out completely by yourself. You're going to get any job you can possibly find and work your way out of this financial hole $1 at a time over many years. And maybe if you actually learn something meaningful from this experience and demonstrate real change, in a few years, we can discuss having some kind of genuine relationship. Alex, please don't do this. I'm your brother. No, I said firmly, walking toward the door without looking back. You're my parents' son. There's a significant difference between those two things. And I walked away from him forever. 6 months later, I heard through Mom that Cameron had filed for bankruptcy and was living in a tiny studio apartment across town, working double shifts at a warehouse loading trucks for minimum wage. Jessica had married some corporate lawyer she'd met on a dating app within 2 months of leaving Cameron. Mom and Dad kept pressuring me relentlessly to help him out financially, to be the bigger person, and forgive family because blood is thicker than water. I told them exactly the same thing I told Cameron. Some crucial life lessons can only be learned through direct personal experience and consequences. Cameron still calls me occasionally now, maybe once every few weeks. He's not asking for money anymore. He finally learned that particular lesson the hard way. He's just trying to check in and slowly rebuild some kind of relationship from absolute scratch. The conversations are incredibly awkward and stilted, but maybe that's exactly how genuine change and growth has to start. Story 2. My parents ditched my event for my brother's football game, only to find out later. It was my wedding. After the pictures blew up online, Dad threatened divorce, Mom's in meltdown mode, brothers raging, now the entire family's falling apart piece by piece. Hey Reddit. So I invited my parents to something important. They chose my brother's football game instead. I didn't tell them it was my wedding. Photos went online. Now my family's in chaos. Here's how it went down. I'm Sam, 28 male, married now, good job, decent life. But if you asked my mom, she's only got one kid worth talking about, and it's not me. My younger brother Mike, 22 male, was born, and apparently became the son our whole house had to orbit. Mom, 52 now, turned into one of those parents who thinks their kids' football stats are the center of the universe. She wasn't like that before. I remember her being normal when I was little. School projects on the fridge, showing up at my science fair, stuff like that. Then Mike came along, and it was like I got erased from the family picture. Doesn't matter that I put myself through college, never asked them for a dime, and actually have a career now. When it comes to my mom, the only stories worth repeating start and end with Mike and whatever game he played last weekend. Dad, 53, never yelled at me or anything, but he never stood up to her either. He just sat there in the background while Mom hyped Mike up like he was a future NFL star. Grandpa Joe, Dad's dad, was the only one who'd point out how messed up it was. He lives a few states over, about a 3-hour drive from my parents' place, but called every week, and he never hid the fact that he thought Mom was playing favorites. He said it straight to her face once during Christmas. Mom didn't talk to him for months after that. One thing that still stings. My grandparents set up a college fund for me. After a small house fire my junior year, Mom started calling it an emergency fund and said it got used for repairs. Years later, I learned the truth. A big chunk went to Mike's first car, and another chunk went to the down payment on his apartment when he started college. I was working 2 jobs just to keep my own rent paid back then. People ask why I didn't go no contact sooner. Truth is, I tried for years to win some kind of approval. I kept thinking if I hit enough milestones, they'd show up. Didn't happen. Grandpa Joe was the only one who acted proud of me. When I graduated college, he mailed me a handwritten letter saying he wished he could have been there and slipped a $100 bill inside because every man deserves a cold drink after walking the stage. That's the kind of guy he is. I met my wife, Nora, in college. We started as friends, both working at the same library desk job. She knew about the family stuff early because she saw it firsthand. Freshman year, My parents visited campus once the whole year because Mike's team had an away game nearby. They didn't even call me to meet up. I found out through Facebook pictures. Nora's the opposite of my family. Her parents show up to everything. Small stuff too. Like when she had a photography exhibit, her mom brought cookies for the whole class. Watching that was weird for me at first. Anyway, the story really starts last year, after one dumb thing Mike did online. But to explain why it hit so hard, you gotta understand the pattern. Mike's been good at football since middle school. I won't lie. He's talented. Got a scholarship to a decent college. But the way my parents acted, you'd think he was already in the Hall of Fame. Mom has a whole room at home full of his jerseys, medals, framed action shots. Meanwhile, I put myself through school with no help, got into tech, moved up slowly. When I bought my first car with my own money, Mom said, "Oh, that's nice." Then launched into how Mike's coach said he might break a record that season. It was like that every time. Grandpa once told me on the phone, "Stop trying to beat your brother at being their favorite. Build your own thing. One day, they'll notice what they missed." And at the time, I thought he was just trying to make me feel better. Turns out he was predicting the future without knowing it. Because one night, about a year ago, Mike posted something on Instagram that started a chain reaction none of us saw coming. It was a short video of him at some party, music blasting, him holding a drink, laughing with his teammates. The caption said, "Some of us chase real goals. Some of us just sit behind desks pretending to be important. Guess which one Mom brags about?" Then a bunch of laughing emojis. Mom liked it. So did a few aunts. One cousin tagged me with an eye emoji. That was the first time I felt something snap a little. Not anger exactly. Just this feeling like, okay, they've made the scoreboard clear. I didn't comment. Didn't text him. But that post set up everything that happened after. Stuff that ended with Mike, my parents, and half the extended family looking real different at me than they used to. And it all started because they didn't bother to ask what event I invited them to. By the next morning, a couple of my old classmates had tagged me under it with laughing emojis. Some wrote things like rough or dang bro, like they were watching a fight instead of my family calling me irrelevant. Mom commented, "So proud of you, champ," under Mike's post, which felt like extra salt on the wound. The post didn't blow up outside our small circle, but it was enough. People I hadn't talked to in years saw it. A friend from high school messaged me, "Man, your brother's a tool?" I just said, "Yeah." Didn't feel like saying more. The thing is, this wasn't new behavior for Mike. He's always been like this. If he wasn't rubbing in some football stat, it was the car Mom bought him at 17, or the apartment they helped him get near campus. He once told me at Thanksgiving that I should aim higher than being average, like he was giving me life advice while our parents nodded along. I didn't respond online because honestly, what was I going to say? Actually, I have a good job? That just makes you look defensive. Instead, I focused on work. At the time, I was leading a small product team at a mid-sized tech company. We'd been working on a tool for months, and around then, we landed a deal with a regional client that meant a big bonus for the team and a title bump for me. It wasn't flashy like sports, but it was the kind of thing people in my field respected. I didn't post about it publicly. I told Nora, told Grandpa Joe over the phone. He was happy for me, said, "Keep stacking wins. People notice even if they act blind." That same week, Mike sent me a private message on Instagram. "You could have been something if you tried harder. Don't blame Mom for backing a winner." No punctuation. Like he was too busy being successful to type properly. I stared at it for a minute, typed cool, and left it at that. He replied with a laughing emoji. Nora saw the message later when we were watching TV. She asked if I was okay. I said yeah, because what else was there to say? None of this was new. The next day, Grandpa Joe called me after one of my cousins told him about the post. He was angry in that quiet way he gets, where he talks slow like he's trying not to yell. He said, "Son, you don't have to clap back. Build your life. Let the scoreboard talk later." I told him about the promotion. He said he wished he lived closer so we could celebrate in person. Then he asked about Nora, how she was doing, if the wedding plans were moving along. Because yeah, by then Nora and I were already engaged. We'd kept it low-key, no big announcements. When we finally picked a date, a Saturday in the fall at Nora's aunt's place, I texted my parents and Mike, "Hey, I've got an important event coming up this fall. Date's October 14th. Would love for you to be there. It's locked in, can't move it." Mom replied, "That's Mike's last regular season game before playoffs. We'll be there supporting him." I didn't correct her or add details. If they cared, they'd ask. They didn't. Nora asked if I wanted to tell them it was the wedding. I said no. If they cared, they'd ask. Meanwhile, the Instagram post finally faded after a couple weeks. People moved on. Mike kept posting clips from games. Mom kept sharing them with captions like, "So proud of my boy." Grandpa Joe kept calling me every Sunday, asking about work, about Nora, about life. He never brought up the post again, just said, "Tell me when the big day is. I'll be there in my best suit. Haven't worn it since your grandma's funeral, so it's about time it saw some good news." I gave him the date. He wrote it down on a calendar he keeps by the fridge. He said he wouldn't miss it for the world. Meanwhile, my parents never asked. Not once. And that's how October 14th stayed on their calendar as Mike's game day instead of Sam's wedding day. I guess to explain why the wedding day ended up the way it did, I should backtrack a bit to when I actually proposed to Nora. It was March last year. We went on this short weekend trip to a cabin 2 hours out of the city. Nothing fancy, just a quiet spot with hiking trails and a lake. I'd been carrying the ring around for 2 weeks, waiting for the right time. I'm not great with big speeches, so I kept it simple. Saturday morning, we hiked up this trail that led to a lookout point over the water. It wasn't crowded that early. I pulled out the ring, managed to say something about wanting her with me in every chapter of my life, and that was it. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the thing. She laughed, said yes immediately, hugged me so hard I lost my balance for a second. No audience, no cameras, just us and a couple birds somewhere in the trees. When we got back home, I called to say I'd proposed. Mom said, "Oh, that's nice," and immediately pivoted to Mike's off-season tournament. Dad murmured, "Congrats, son." That was the whole reaction. Nora didn't say anything at the time, but later she asked if that was normal. I said yeah. For the next few months, every time we saw my parents, Mom talked about Mike's training schedule, his stats, his chances for playoffs. Not one question about our plans. Around summer, I found out something else that just cemented everything for me. One of my cousins mentioned that my parents had paid for Mike's new sports agent and some advanced training camp out of state. Big money stuff. I asked how Mike afforded all that, and the cousin said, "Oh, your folks helped. Didn't you know?" No, I didn't. Apparently they used what little was left of that same emergency fund they dipped into years ago. The college fund that was supposed to help me with grad school before it ran out. I remember just sitting there for a while, letting it sink in. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was the pattern. Everything for Mike. Scraps for me, if that. I didn't argue with them, and argue with. I didn't bring it up at all. I just told Nora, "We're not waiting for them to be excited about our wedding. We're doing it our way." We picked October 14th because it was the only weekend the venue Nora's aunt owned was free in the fall. It was this big backyard with string lights, space for tables, a small dance floor, and a nice view of the hills behind it. Perfect for what we wanted. Simple, private, nothing huge. We invited maybe 60 people. Close friends, some of Nora's family, my grandpa Joe, a few cousins I actually talked to. I told him I wanted him to walk me down the aisle since Mom and Dad couldn't be bothered. He went quiet for a second, then said he'd be honored. Meanwhile, Mom kept posting on Facebook about Mike's upcoming game, sharing his highlight reels, talking about scouts possibly being there. Not one word about my event. Dad didn't say anything either. He just stayed quiet like always. By September, everything for the wedding was set. Nora handled decorations with her aunt. I handled the guest list and food. My parents never once checked in. Mike sent me one text in late September. "Hope your thing goes good." Mom said it's same day as my game. Bad timing, lol. I didn't reply. Looking back, that was the point where I stopped expecting anything from them at all. October 14th last year came fast. Nora and I stayed at her aunt's place the night before, so we wouldn't have to rush in the morning. She and her family had been amazing, helping with decorations, organizing chairs, setting up lights. By sunrise, the backyard looked perfect. It wasn't some huge ballroom wedding, but it felt right. String lights across the yard, tables lined with simple flowers, a rented arch for the ceremony, and a small setup for the DJ in the corner. The weather was cool, but clear. People started arriving around noon. My college friends flew in from 3 different states. 2 cousins I hadn't seen in years drove 6 hours to be there. Everyone kept asking if my parents were coming. I told them no. They had other plans. Nobody pressed me on it right then. Grandpa Joe showed up in his old dark suit looking sharp. He walked straight over, hugged me, and handed me a small box. "Your grandma wanted this passed down," he said. Inside was her locket. She told me to give it to the one kid who showed up for others the way people showed up for him. I just nodded. Didn't trust myself to talk. The ceremony started at 2. Grandpa Joe walked me to the arch while Nora's dad walked her. Our friend Amanda officiated. She's got the kind of voice that makes everything sound official. even though she mostly reads poetry at open mics. We kept the vows short. Neither of us wanted to drag it out. When Amanda said we were married, everyone cheered, someone popped one of those confetti tubes, and the DJ played a song Nora loved from college. We did photos right after. A professional photographer handled the main shots, but people snapped their own too. My cousins wanted a big family picture. That's when someone asked again where my parents were. I said, Mike had a game. They couldn't make it. A couple of relatives exchanged looks but didn't comment. Grandpa Joe leaned toward me at one point and said, "They're going to regret this." Dinner was buffet style. Barbecue, pasta, salad, nothing fancy but plenty of it. Nora's aunt knew a caterer who gave us a discount, and people went back for seconds. We paid for the wedding ourselves. No loans, no help from my parents, just us and Nora's aunt giving us a break on the space. While folks were eating, one of my dad's sisters, Aunt Linda, took a few pictures of the ceremony and posted them on Facebook. I didn't think much about it then. I wasn't on my phone anyway. We'd planned to go completely offline once the night ended. After dinner, we had a small first dance, then opened the floor. Some kids ran around playing tag near the fence. People laughed, told stories, stayed late. It felt like what weddings are supposed to feel like, friends and family actually being present. Around 9 p.m., we wrapped things up. Guests started leaving in groups. My college buddies offered to help clean up, but Nora's aunt waved them off, said she'd handle it in the morning. Grandpa Joe hugged us both and said, "I haven't danced in 20 years. I'm going to pay for it tomorrow, but it was worth it." We promised to call him once we got back from our trip. The plan was simple. We'd leave the next morning for a short honeymoon, no phones, no work, just a week off. We both wanted to disconnect completely. Before bed, I glanced at my phone once. Dozens of notifications already from relatives reacting to Aunt Linda's post. A few messages from cousins saying things like, "Your mom's comment section is going wild." I put the phone face down and didn't open anything. Figured it could wait until after the trip. The next morning, we loaded the car, waved goodbye to Nora's aunt, and drove off. It felt good leaving everything behind for a while. No calls, no texts, no drama for 7 straight days. Just us, some hiking trails, a couple small towns we'd never visited, and quiet evenings. I didn't know it yet, but while we were gone, that Facebook post was spreading through our parents' whole community. People they'd known for decades were sharing it, commenting on it, asking why they weren't at their own son's wedding. By the time we got home, things had completely blown up. When Nora and I got back a week later, I turned my phone on for the first time since the wedding. It barely loaded before notifications started coming in nonstop. Missed calls, texts, voicemails, tags on Facebook, dozens of them. At first, I thought something serious had happened, like an accident. But then I opened Messenger and saw a wall of messages about Aunt Linda's wedding post. She'd uploaded maybe 10 pictures, us at the ceremony, Grandpa Joe giving a little toast, the dance floor. Her caption said, "Beautiful day celebrating Sam and Nora." Some folks chose other priorities, but the rest of us had a wonderful time. That line, "some folks chose other priorities," was what set everything off. People from our hometown started sharing it with comments like, "Wait, his parents didn't go?" And "Didn't they miss his graduation too?" A couple people even tagged my mom directly asking if it was true. By the time I was scrolling, it had spread through local groups, old neighbors, even people from our church growing up. It wasn't viral like millions of strangers seeing it, but in our parents' community, everyone knew. Under my aunt's photos, Mom commented, "He never told us it was a wedding." People immediately pointed out she hadn't asked. That was the whole problem, boiled down to a thread. Meanwhile, my inbox was full of messages from Mom, ranging from angry to begging. The first ones were pure rage. "How dare you humiliate us like this?" Then, "Your aunt had no right to post that." And the best one, "You should have told us it was your wedding." Like she wasn't the one ignoring my texts for months. After a few hours, the tone switched. "Please call me. We need to talk." Then, "People won't stop messaging me. I can't sleep." And finally, "This is tearing our family apart." Mike sent his own set of texts, full of attitude like always. "Real classy move, bro." Then, "You made Mom look bad on purpose." He even threw in, "You're pathetic for hiding your wedding like that." Like I was the villain here. I didn't answer any of them. The real hit came from Grandpa Joe. While we were gone, he drove 3 hours to visit my parents in person, sat them down in their own living room, and told my dad he was ashamed of him for letting this happen. My cousin who lives nearby said Grandpa didn't yell, but his words landed hard. He told Dad, "You've let that woman run this house into the ground while your son learned to stop expecting anything from you." According to my cousin, Dad just sat there pale, like someone pulled the plug out of him. After Grandpa left, Dad called me. I let it go to voicemail because we were still unpacking. He left a message saying he was sorry, that he felt sick for missing the wedding, that he knew he failed as a father, said he told Mom things were going to change or he was done. That surprised me. My dad's been quiet my whole life. Hearing he finally put his foot down felt strange. Mom kept messaging, though. After the angry ones came the guilt trips. She wrote things like, "I'm your mother. I deserve a chance to explain." Then, "You don't know how hard this has been on me." She even tried, "Your father is talking crazy, saying things he doesn't mean." By the end of the week, she was straight up begging, "Please don't cut us off." Then, "I'll do anything to make this right." While all this was happening, Aunt Linda texted me saying, "I didn't think my post would cause this much drama. I just wanted to celebrate you guys." I told her it wasn't her fault. On top of that, other relatives started calling me. A couple of Mom's sisters were mad at me for making her look bad. They said she was heartbroken, crying all day, embarrassed in front of her friends. I told them she embarrassed herself by skipping my wedding for a football game. Dad's side of the family mostly backed me. A few cousins even posted supportive comments under Aunt Linda's pictures. Stuff like, "Sam deserved better," and "About time someone said it." The whole thing reached another level when Mike's big game, the one my parents chose instead, went badly. His team lost, and he got benched in the second half after throwing 2 interceptions. They still slipped into the playoffs on a tiebreaker, but got bounced in the first round the following week. People online started joking about how he skipped his brother's wedding for that performance. Some of his own teammates commented laughing emojis under posts about it. Mike texted me again after that, furious. Said I'd cursed the season with my drama. I didn't reply. By the end of the week, Dad texted again asking to meet in person. He said he wanted to talk man to man without Mom there first. I agreed, but only after telling Nora everything. She said she'd back whatever decision I made, but didn't want me letting them guilt me into anything. That's when I realized things were only getting messier before they got clearer. Dad picked the diner 2 towns over, said he didn't want anyone overhearing. When I got there, he was already sitting at a booth near the back. Coffee in front of him, no food. He looked older than I remembered, like the last couple of weeks had taken years off him. He didn't waste time. As soon as I sat down, he said, "I owe you an apology." I didn't say anything, just waited. He looked at his coffee like he was scared of eye contact. "I should have been at your wedding. I should have been at a lot of things. Your graduations, your games, all of it. I let your mother run everything because I didn't want fights in the house. I thought keeping the peace was the same thing as being a good dad. It wasn't. It was the most direct thing I'd ever heard from him. He said he told Mom if she didn't start fixing things with me, he was done. He'd spent the last week on the couch after Grandpa Joe's visit because he couldn't even look at her without thinking about what Grandpa said. He said Grandpa told him he failed as both a son and a father. Then he said he wanted to start making things right. Not just words, actual changes. He said he wanted counseling, was going to pay back what he took from my college fund even if it took years, and wasn't letting Mom's excuses run the show anymore. He didn't write every check, but he let it happen, and he said as much. I told him I appreciated the apology, but this wasn't something a few checks and therapy sessions would magically fix. He nodded and said he knew. Said he was ready to prove it with actions. We sat there a while, not talking much. When the waitress came, he ordered pie for both of us like that would make things less heavy. It didn't, but I ate it anyway. 2 days later, Mom texted asking to meet too, this time with both of them. Nora came with me. I wasn't going to sit through whatever this was alone. We met at the same diner. Mom looked wrecked. Puffy eyes, messy hair, like she hadn't been sleeping. She started right in with, "You didn't tell us it was your wedding. If you had, we would have been there." And I told her I invited them to an event. And she didn't even ask what it was before saying Mike's game was more important. She tried saying it was a misunderstanding, that she assumed it wasn't major because I didn't push. I said, "That's the problem. You never cared enough to ask?" She started crying. Not quiet tears either. Full-on sobbing into a napkin. The waitress kept glancing over. Mom said she thought she was supporting the child who needed it most. That Mike's career had a window of opportunity, and she wanted to give him every chance. I said she didn't support him. She obsessed over him and forgot she had another kid. I told her about the college fund, the graduations, the birthdays she skipped, listed them out so she couldn't act like this was about one wedding. She kept saying she was sorry. I told her sorry didn't erase years of choices. Dad stayed quiet except to say he was starting counseling, and she should come too. He said things were changing whether she liked it or not. By the end of the meal, I told them I wasn't cutting them off, but I wasn't pretending everything was fine either. I told them if they wanted a relationship, it was going to take time and actual effort. No more one-sided excuses. Mom nodded through tears. Dad just looked tired, but said he understood. The next day, Mike texted asking to meet man to man. We met at the park near my apartment. He showed up in his team hoodie, looking annoyed before we even started talking. He said he was under pressure from scouts, coaches, his whole season falling apart. He said the wedding thing blew up bigger than it should have. I told him it blew up because our parents spent years acting like I didn't exist while he rubbed it in my face. He said he didn't ask to be the favorite. I said, yeah, but you sure enjoyed it. He didn't deny it, just kicked at the gravel near his feet and said, people hate me now because of this. I told him people hated what he represented, a family that put one kid on a throne and ignored the other. He asked if we were good. I said we weren't enemies, but we weren't brothers either. Not right now. He didn't have anything to say to that. When I got home, Grandpa Joe called to check in. I told him about the talks. He said he was proud I kept my head and didn't get dragged into another fight. Stick to what you said and let time do the talking, he told me. 2 days later, my boss offered me a lead role on a new product line at work. Bigger responsibility, better pay. I accepted. For the first time in weeks, I felt like something in my life was moving forward, while the rest of them were stuck dealing with the mess they made. By winter, things had settled down, at least on my side. Nora and I moved into a bigger apartment closer to work, and I started the new role leading the product team. The extra pay meant we could finally start saving for a house instead of just talking about it. Dad kept his word about the money. Every month, like clockwork, he sent a small transfer labeled College Fund Payback. Sometimes $20, sometimes $50. Not big amounts, but enough to show he wasn't just talking. He even wrote little notes like month 1 or getting there. It wasn't about the money anymore anyway. It was about him actually doing something for once. He also told me he started going to counseling. Said it was strange at first, but he was learning how to actually speak up instead of keeping the peace by staying silent. I didn't push him for details, just said I was glad he was doing it. Mom went with him a couple times, according to Dad. He said the counselor told her point blank she needed to stop living through Mike's life and actually look at the damage she caused. I don't know if she took it to heart. She did text me a few times saying she was sorry again, but I didn't answer right away. When I finally did, I told her I wasn't interested in hearing more apologies. I wanted to see actual change. If she wanted a relationship, she had to stop acting like nothing happened and start proving things were different now. She said she understood. I wasn't sure if she really did, but at least the conversation stopped being about her crying and started being about what she was going to do moving forward. Mike stayed mostly quiet after that park conversation. He had a rough end to his season. First round playoff exit, no scouts knocking with offers like he expected. He posted less online too, probably tired of people leaving comments about how he skipped my wedding and lost the game anyway. He texted once in December saying people still thought he was the villain of the family. I told him that was because he acted like one for years. He said that wasn't fair. I told him fair would have been me having parents who cared about more than his football stats. He didn't reply after that. On Christmas, Dad came alone to visit us. Said Mom stayed home because she didn't want to make things awkward. He brought a small gift for Nora, a set of baking dishes she actually needed, and a framed photo from our wedding he had printed. Said he got it from Aunt Linda and wanted us to have it. It was the first time he'd given me anything personal in years. We ate lunch, talked about work, about Grandpa Joe coming to visit in the spring. Nothing heavy. When he left, he said he was proud of me. Simple words, but he'd never said them before. By February, Nora and I were looking at houses online. Nothing rushed, just seeing what was out there. My job was going well, she was getting more photography clients, and life finally felt like it belonged to us instead of being tied up in family drama. Grandpa Joe came out to see us in March. We drove him to this big park with hiking trails and a lake. He used a cane now, but insisted on walking as far as he could. Said it felt good to breathe fresh air after winter. He told me he was proud of how I handled everything. Said most people either explode or cut everyone off completely, but I drew lines and stuck to them. Said that takes more strength than yelling. We sat on a bench looking out at the water. He told me about when he was younger and finally stood up to his own father about something. Said it didn't fix everything overnight, but it changed the way people treated him from then on. Driving back, I thought about how different things felt now. Not perfect, but quiet. No daily drama, no constant texts demanding attention, no fights about Mike. Just my life, moving forward. A week later, I posted one photo from the wedding on my own page. Nothing dramatic, just me, Nora, and Grandpa Joe standing under the lights in the backyard. My caption said, "I'm good. Built my own thing. With people who show up." That was it. No hashtags, no long explanation, no comments left on. After that, I put my phone away, sat on the couch with Nora and Grandpa, and watched the sun go down through the window. For the first time in years, it felt like everything was finally where it belonged. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Story 3. I was falsely accused of SA by my 13 years old niece. My family disowned me, my girlfriend left, and I lost everything. But 6 months later, the truth comes out, and now they want to reconcile. No way. So let me set the scene. Back then, I was doing pretty well for myself. Had a solid job in project management, owned a decent apartment in a nice part of the city, had friends, had a life. Nothing fancy, but I'd worked hard to build something stable after years of grinding through college and entry-level positions. My family and I were tight, or so I thought. Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, the whole 9 yards. My sister Sarah and I especially were close. We'd grown up looking out for each other, and when she had her daughter, Melissa, I was there at the hospital. First one besides the dad to hold that kid. I loved being an uncle. Took the role seriously, you know? I'd show up to Melissa's school events, help her with homework when Sarah was swamped with work, taught her how to ride a bike. Standard uncle stuff. The kid was smart, funny, a little dramatic sometimes. But what teenage girl isn't? Sarah was a single mom after her divorce when Melissa was 8, so I tried to step up when I could. Nothing weird, nothing inappropriate, just being family. Melissa was always a bit of a handful, though. Sarah had this parenting style where she basically never said no to the kid. Whatever Melissa wanted, Melissa got. New phone? Sure. Skip chores? No problem. Talk back to adults? Just teenagers being teenagers, right? I'd mentioned to Sarah a few times that maybe some boundaries would help, but she'd get defensive. Said I didn't understand because I wasn't a parent. Fair enough, I guess. But there was this one incident about 6 months before everything went nuclear. We were all at my parents' house for some random Sunday gathering. Melissa was in one of her moods, being disrespectful to our mom, rolling her eyes, making snide comments. I pulled her aside, not even yelling or anything, just said something like, "Hey, that's your grandmother. You need to watch your tone." She looked at me like I'd slapped her. Got this cold look in her eyes I'd never seen before. Then she stormed off to Sarah, and I heard her complaining about how I'd embarrassed her in front of everyone. Sarah came over, told me to back off, that she'd handle her own daughter. I apologized, dropped it, figured it wasn't worth the drama. Should have paid more attention to that look Melissa gave me, though. That was the first red flag I completely missed. Fast forward to late spring 3 years ago. My parents were throwing a barbecue at their place. Pretty standard family thing. Burgers and hot dogs, cousins running around. That suburban weekend vibe. I showed up after work, still in my button-down, but I ditched the tie. Everything seemed normal at first. Melissa was there with a couple of her friends, doing that thing where teenage girls huddle together and whisper. I said hi. She barely acknowledged me. Whatever. Teenagers are moody. About an hour into the barbecue, Sarah pulled me into the kitchen. The second I walked in, I knew something was wrong. Her face was pale, hands shaking, this look of absolute rage in her eyes. Before I could even ask what was up, she got right in my face and said, "Did you touch Melissa?" I'm standing there completely confused. What are you talking about? Did you touch her? My brain literally couldn't process what she was asking. Touch her? Like what, a high five? A hug? What was she even saying? Then she spelled it out, and I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. She said Melissa had come to her the night before, crying, saying I'd touched her inappropriately, that I'd assaulted her. I just stared at Sarah, waiting for her to laugh, to say it was some sick joke, but she wasn't laughing. She was dead serious, and she was looking at me like I was the worst thing that ever existed. Sarah, that never happened. I would never... She didn't let me finish. She slapped me, hard, right across the face. Then she started screaming at me to get out, that she was calling the police, that I was disgusting, that she never wanted to see me again. My parents came running in, other family members crowding the doorway. Everyone staring at me like I'm some kind of predator. I tried to explain, tried to tell them this was insane, that I'd never done anything wrong, but nobody wanted to hear it. Sarah was already on the phone with the cops, and my mom was crying, and my dad looked like he wanted to hit me too. The only thing I could think to do was leave before things got worse. I left that barbecue in a daze, drove home on autopilot, sat in my apartment, and just tried to process what had happened. My niece, this kid I'd helped raise, had just accused me of something so vile I couldn't even wrap my head around it. And my sister, my own sister who'd known me my entire life, believed it without even asking for my side of the story. The police showed up at my apartment that evening. 2 detectives, all business. They asked me to come to the station to answer some questions. I went voluntarily because I had nothing to hide. Told them exactly what I'd been doing the night Melissa claimed this happened. Turns out I had a pretty solid alibi. I'd been at a work dinner with my entire team that night, from 6 in the evening until almost midnight. 15 witnesses, restaurant receipts, everything documented. The detectives seemed skeptical of the accusation from the start, but they had to investigate. They interviewed Melissa multiple times. Her story kept changing. First, she said it happened at my apartment. Then she said it was at my parents' house. Then she couldn't remember exactly when. The timeline she gave didn't match anything. One detective told me later, off the record, that they see false accusations sometimes, but they still have to investigate thoroughly. I appreciated his honesty, but it didn't make the process any less destructive. Every interview felt like I was being treated as guilty until proven innocent. Every question felt loaded. The worst part was waiting. Waiting for them to verify my alibi. Waiting for Melissa's story to fall apart. Every day that passed was another day my life hung in limbo. Meanwhile, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications. People I hadn't talked to in years were reaching out. Hey man, heard what happened. Is it true? Real supportive stuff. I ended up changing my number after the first week. See, here's what nobody tells you about being accused of something like this. Even when you're innocent, even when the evidence proves you didn't do anything wrong, people still look at you differently. Within 2 days, my entire neighborhood knew. Someone had posted about it on social media. Didn't use my name, but gave enough details that everyone figured it out. My landlord called me 3 days after the accusation. Said other tenants were uncomfortable with me living in the building. When I asked what grounds he had to kick me out when I hadn't been charged with anything, he backed off but said he was keeping an eye on the situation. Work was worse. My boss brought me in for a meeting. Said maybe I should take some time off. I told him I had an alibi, that the police would verify it. He gave me this practiced, sympathetic look and said it wasn't about guilt or innocence, it was about optics. The company couldn't afford to have someone under investigation working there. They'd keep me on paid leave for now, but the implication was clear. That meeting crushed me more than the accusation itself. This was a company I'd given 6 years of my life to. I'd worked weekends, pulled all-nighters on projects, trained new employees. And the second things got complicated, they threw me out. Didn't matter that I was innocent. I told him I was innocent, that I had an alibi, that this was clearly false. He gave me this look like he wanted to believe me but wasn't sure. Said it was just temporary, just until things calmed down. That temporary leave turned into me being quietly pushed out within a month. Couldn't go to the grocery store without people whispering. Couldn't go to the gym without someone staring. Old friends stopped returning calls. People I'd known for years just ghosted me. One friend sent me a text that said, "I don't know what the truth is, but I have kids, so I can't associate with you right now." I understood perfectly. Everyone was protecting themselves. The gym was particularly bad. I'd been going to the same place for 4 years. After the accusation, people would move to the other side when I showed up. Finally, I just stopped going, canceled my membership, and worked out at home. My parents sent a single text during those first 4 months. It said, "We're praying for the truth to come out." Not, "We believe in you." Just a vague statement about truth. Their silence said everything. The few family members who did reach out were worse. My aunt said she had to protect her own children first. My cousin asked if I'd take a polygraph test. My uncle suggested I apologize to Melissa to smooth things over. Apologize for something I didn't do, just to make everyone comfortable. People I hadn't spoken to in years came out with their takes. "I remember you being kind of quiet in school became, you were always creepy." Every normal aspect of my personality got reframed as suspicious. The worst part was, I kept thinking it would all blow over once the truth came out. I kept thinking, okay, they'll investigate, they'll see Melissa's lying, and everyone will apologize, and we'll move past this. I was naive as hell. 4 months into this nightmare, the police officially closed the case. No charges filed. My alibi was rock solid. Melissa's story had more holes than Swiss cheese, and there was zero evidence anything had happened. I thought that would be the end of it. Finally, vindication, right? Wrong. Because by then, I'd already lost my job. My reputation was destroyed. I'd burned through most of my savings on a lawyer. And the people who'd turned their backs on me? They didn't suddenly welcome me back with open arms. Most of them still looked at me like I was guilty. No charges doesn't mean innocent. That kind of garbage. Some people actually said to my face that I probably did it, but got away with it because of some technicality. I moved to a different part of the city, found a new apartment in a neighborhood where nobody knew me. Started job hunting, which was brutal. Background checks didn't show an arrest, but Google did. My name was associated with the accusation online. Someone had archived the original social media post. I tried everything to get it removed. Nothing worked. Had to explain it in interviews. Most HR people would get this shift in their expression when they brought it up. I'd walk them through the whole story. Falsely accused, fully investigated, completely cleared. Some were understanding. Most said they'd keep my resume on file. One interview destroyed me. The hiring manager seemed great. Multiple rounds of talks. Then he said the company couldn't move forward. They'd seen the accusations online. He said he personally believed me, but his hands were tied. I sat in my car for an hour afterward. Eventually landed a new job, less pay, less prestige. The company was smaller, more willing to take a chance. My new boss had his own unfair situation years back, understood how the system works. That job probably saved me. Started rebuilding from scratch, made new friends who didn't know my past, kept my head down, learned to be careful about who I trusted, started seeing a therapist because the paranoia was getting bad. I'd second guess every interaction, wondering if people were Googling me later. And I made a decision. I was done with my old family. Completely done. Not in an angry way, not in a revenge way, just in a practical, self-preservation way. These people had proven they couldn't be trusted. They'd chosen comfort over truth, panic over patience, and in doing so, they'd shown me exactly where I stood in their priorities. Dead last. Then, 6 months after the investigation closed, Sarah called me. First time I'd heard from her since she'd slapped me at that barbecue. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. She sounded terrible, like she'd been crying for hours. Said she needed to tell me something, that it was important. That's when she dropped the bomb. Melissa had admitted she lied. The whole thing was made up. Some girls at her school had apparently put her up to it. Revenge for me scolding her that time. Melissa had been feeling guilty, started acting out, and eventually broke down and confessed to Sarah. Sarah was sobbing, apologizing over and over, saying she should have talked to me first, should have asked for my side, should have done literally anything besides immediately destroying my life based on a teenager's accusation. I sat there listening to her cry, and I felt absolutely nothing. No relief, no anger, nothing. Just this empty coldness. The validation that I'd been innocent all along should have meant something. Should have felt like vindication, but it didn't. Because the damage was already done. I'd already lost everything. Knowing I was right didn't bring back my job, my reputation, my sense of safety, or the year of my life I'd spent in hell. When she finally stopped talking, I asked her one question. Did you ever, even once, think to ask me if it was true before you destroyed my life? She didn't have an answer for that. Started with excuses. Said she was scared, that she was protecting her daughter, that any mother would have reacted the same way. I told her that any decent person would have asked questions first. That family should mean giving each other the benefit of the doubt, at least long enough to verify the facts. That she'd known me for 30 plus years and should have known I wasn't capable of what Melissa accused me of. She got quiet. Then she said, I know. You're right. I failed you. I'm so sorry. I told her I appreciated her letting me know, then I hung up. She called back immediately. I didn't answer. She called 17 more times that day. Didn't answer any of them. She left voicemails, each one more desperate than the last, begging me to talk to her, to give her a chance to explain, to let her make things right somehow. I deleted them all without listening to more than a few seconds. The thing was, her apology didn't change anything. It didn't undo what happened. It didn't erase the months of being treated like a criminal, the job loss, the social isolation, the paranoia, the depression, none of it. All it did was confirm what I already knew. I was innocent. But being innocent never protected me from losing everything. Over the next few weeks, my entire family came out of the woodwork. Everyone suddenly wanted to talk, apologize, make things right. My mom sent me a care package with cookies. Like cookies could fix this. I gave them to my neighbor. My dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. I looked through the peephole, saw him standing there, almost opened the door. Then I remembered that barbecue, the disgust on his face. I opened the door just enough to speak through the chain lock. He said we needed to talk man to man. I told him I record all conversations now. He could email me. His face went from determined to hurt to angry. Started raising his voice about throwing away family over pride. I closed the door. Got an email from him later. Long thing about family obligations, forgiveness, mistakes. Said my refusal was hurting my mother. I archived it without responding. My cousins tried the friendly approach. Tyler sent me a message about grabbing coffee. I agreed, curious what angle they'd take. We met at a chain coffee place. After small talk, he got to the real reason. Said the family missed me. Everyone regretted what happened. Melissa was struggling with guilt. I asked where he was during my investigation. He got uncomfortable, said it was complicated. I told him it wasn't. Either you believed I was capable of that, or you didn't. He chose to believe it. That was his choice. The thing is, I'd already moved on. In the 6 months between the accusation and Sarah's confession, I'd built a new life. New job, new friends, new apartment, new everything. I'd gone to therapy, worked through the anger and betrayal, and accepted that my old life was gone. I wasn't the same person anymore. The naive guy who showed up to family barbecues and trusted everyone, he died the day Sarah slapped me. This new version of me? I was careful, guarded. I documented everything, kept records of all my interactions, maintained boundaries like they were military checkpoints, and I absolutely refused to let anyone back in who'd thrown me away so easily. Sarah kept trying. Calls, texts, emails, showing up at my apartment building. I never engaged beyond telling her to stop contacting me. She'd apologize, say Melissa was just a kid, that she was manipulated, that everyone makes mistakes. I'd remind her that her mistake cost me my job, my reputation, my savings, and a year of my life. Then I'd walk away. My parents tried the mediation route, set up this whole family meeting without asking me, then called to tell me when and where to show up. I laughed and hung up. They got upset, said I was being stubborn, that family forgives. I sent them an email explaining that I didn't consider them family anymore, and they should stop acting like they had any claim to my time or energy. Some relatives thought I was being too harsh, said I should forgive Melissa because she was young. Let me break down why that logic is absolute garbage. Melissa was 13 when she lied, old enough to understand consequences. She wasn't 6 years old making up a story about a monster under the bed. She deliberately, with premeditation, accused me of something she knew could put me in prison. She watched as I lost everything and said nothing for 6 months. And Sarah? She chose to believe a story with zero evidence over her own brother. Didn't ask questions, didn't wait for facts, just immediately went nuclear. That tells me exactly what she thought of me, exactly how little I mattered compared to her automatic assumptions. People love to say that family should forgive, that you only get one family, all that sentimental stuff. But here's the truth. Family is supposed to have your back. Family is supposed to give you the benefit of the doubt. Family is supposed to know you well enough to say, wait, that doesn't sound like something he'd do. Let's figure out what actually happened. My family did none of that. 2 years went by. I'd moved on with my life, doing better than before. Got promoted at my new job. Started dating someone at a work conference. She was smart, funny, had her life together. We took things slow, made solid friendships with people who respected boundaries. My apartment started feeling like home. Bought furniture I liked, had artwork on the walls, plants I kept alive. Small things that represented stability. Then, Melissa's 16th birthday rolled around. Sarah called from a number I didn't have blocked. Caught me off guard. She launched into a prepared speech. Melissa wanted to see me, had written a letter, just wanted to apologize in person. Sarah begged me to consider it. These 3 years had been hard on Melissa too. She'd lost friends, been bullied. Said Melissa had nightmares, was in therapy twice a week, had tried to hurt herself once from guilt. Sarah was trying to make me feel responsible for Melissa's mental health. Same manipulation, different angle. I listened for 10 minutes straight. Sarah cycled through every argument. Melissa was just a kid. She'd been manipulated. She'd learned her lesson. Everyone wanted to heal. Why was I being so stubborn? When she stopped, I said one word. No. Sarah tried to argue. Said Melissa was suffering, that she had nightmares, that she was in therapy, that she'd changed. I told Sarah that none of that was my problem. Melissa made her choices, and she could live with them. I'd made mine too. She was just a kid, Sarah said. She was old enough to know better, I replied. And you were definitely old enough to know better. You made your choice 3 years ago. I'm making mine now. Sarah started crying, saying I was being cruel, that Melissa just wanted closure. I told her that I got my closure when I blocked everyone's numbers and moved on with my life. What Melissa wanted was forgiveness so she could feel better about herself. That wasn't my responsibility. Don't call me again, I said, and hung up. She sent the letter anyway, mailed it to my apartment. I don't know how she got my address, whether she hired someone to find it or stalked me somehow. That violation bothered me more than the letter itself. The letter was exactly what you'd expect. Lots of, I'm sorry. Lots of, I was young and stupid. Lots of, I miss you. Melissa talked about how hard these years had been for her, how she'd lost friends, how kids at school called her a liar and worse, how she wished she could take it all back. She wrote about specific memories, learning to ride a bike, me teaching her, birthday parties where I'd shown up with gifts, times I'd helped her with homework. She was trying to remind me of who we used to be to each other, trying to trigger some emotional response that would make me want to reconnect. Standard manipulation tactic, and I recognized it because my therapist had prepared me for exactly this kind of thing. The letter was well written, I'll give her that. Probably went through multiple drafts, maybe even had help from her therapist or Sarah. It hit all the right notes, acknowledged what she did, took responsibility, expressed genuine-sounding remorse, outlined how she'd changed, asked for nothing except a chance to apologize in person. If I didn't know better, if I hadn't lived through what her lie did to me, it might have been moving. But I did know better, and I recognized the letter for what it was. Not really an apology for my benefit, but a step in Melissa's healing process. Her therapist probably suggested it. Write a letter to the person you wronged, express your feelings, take accountability. Good therapeutic technique? Sure. But the purpose was to help Melissa feel better, not to actually make amends to me. I read it once, then put it through the shredder. Not out of anger or spite, just pure practicality. That chapter of my life was closed. Some people online have told me I should have at least responded, that I should give her a chance, that holding on to anger is toxic. But here's what those people don't understand. I'm not holding on to anger. I'm not consumed by resentment. I'm not plotting revenge or enjoying their suffering. I'm just indifferent. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. And I'm completely apathetic about my former family. They're strangers now, people I used to know, like old classmates you run into at the store and exchange pleasantries with before moving on with your day. Except I don't even want the pleasantries. An apology doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't give me back the job I lost, the friends who abandoned me, the year I spent as a social pariah. It doesn't undo the panic attacks I had every time someone looked at me wrong, or the paranoia that made me record every interaction with another human being. It doesn't compensate for having to start my entire life over from scratch at 32 years old. Melissa's apology was for her benefit, not mine. She wanted to feel better, wanted to absolve herself of guilt. That's human nature, I get it. But I didn't owe her that comfort. I didn't owe her anything. Sarah called me again after Melissa's birthday, said I'd broken her daughter's heart by not showing up. I pointed out that Melissa broke my entire life with her lies, so we were hardly even. Sarah said I was holding a grudge against a teenager. I said I was protecting myself from people who'd proven they couldn't be trusted. Big difference. My parents tried one more time about 6 months ago. They're getting older, started with the whole life's too short and family is everything routine. My mom sent me a message saying she wasn't getting any younger, that she wanted to see me before she died, that holding grudges was exhausting. Classic guilt trip. My dad followed up with something about how he'd made mistakes as a father, but he was trying to make it right. And wasn't that worth something? I thought about ignoring them completely. Then I realized that if I didn't meet with them, they'd keep trying different approaches, different guilt trips, different angles. So I agreed to meet for coffee, one time, to make my position clear enough that they'd finally accept it. They said everyone had apologized, that it was time to move on, that I was being unfair by punishing them forever. We met at a neutral location, some chain coffee shop halfway between our areas. I got there early, picked a seat near the exit, brought a book so I'd have something to do if they were late. They weren't. Showed up right on time, looking nervous. I met them for coffee. Only time I'd seen them face to face in 3 years. They looked older, more tired. My mom had more gray hair than I remembered. My dad had lost weight, looked smaller somehow. Part of me felt bad for them. The rest of me remembered what they'd put me through. They sat down, ordered coffee they barely touched. My mom cried through most of it, dabbing at her eyes with napkins she'd brought specifically for this purpose. My dad did his stoic thing, but I could tell he was emotional too. His hands were shaking when he lifted his coffee cup. They said they missed me, that family gatherings weren't the same without me, that they'd made a mistake by not supporting me from the start. My mom talked about how empty the holidays felt, how she'd set a plate for me at Thanksgiving out of habit, and then cried when she realized I wasn't coming. My dad mentioned my birthday, how they'd sent a card that came back marked "Return to Sender" because I'd changed addresses without telling them. They were trying to show me how much my absence hurt them, how much they wanted me back. I listened to everything they had to say. Didn't interrupt, didn't argue, just let them get it all out. When they finally stopped talking and looked at me expectantly, I laid it out for them plain and simple. When Sarah accused me, you didn't ask questions. You didn't call me aside and say, "What happened? Tell us your side." You just assumed I was guilty. You let me walk out of that barbecue alone, knowing what people were saying about me, and you didn't reach out once during the investigation. Not once. You let me go through months of hell completely alone, let my life fall apart without even checking if the story made sense. That told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in this family. My mom tried to interrupt, to explain, but I held up my hand. I'm not done. You've apologized now, and I appreciate that. I really do. But an apology doesn't create trust. Trust is built over time through actions, and you destroyed 30 plus years of trust in one afternoon. I'm not interested in rebuilding. I have a good life now, with people who respect me and believe in me. People who gave me the benefit of the doubt when things got complicated, who stood by me, who asked questions before making judgments. I don't need the stress of wondering if you'll throw me away again the next time someone makes an accusation. My dad started to speak, something about how they'd never make that mistake again, but I cut him off. You don't know that. You can't know that. Because when it mattered, when I needed you most, you failed. Not because you're bad people, but because you're human. You panicked, you believed the worst, you protected yourselves. I get it, but I'm protecting myself now. And that means keeping distance from people who've proven they can't be trusted when things get scary. My mom said I was being too harsh, that everyone deserves a second chance. I told her she might be right, but I was choosing not to give one. That was my choice to make, just like it was her choice to believe I was guilty without evidence. We haven't spoken since. The thing is, I don't think about them much anymore. Occasionally, something will remind me of the old days, some random memory of Sunday dinners or holiday traditions, and I'll feel a twinge of something. Not quite sadness, not quite nostalgia, just acknowledgement that things used to be different. But then I remember what they put me through, and that feeling disappears fast. Gets replaced by this quiet satisfaction that I got out, that I built something better, that I'm not stuck in a cycle of people who treat family as disposable. My girlfriend and I hit the 2-year mark last month. She's incredible, honestly. Works in marketing, has this great sense of humor, challenges me in good ways. We moved in together about 6 months ago, got a place with an extra bedroom we're using as a home office. She knows the broad strokes of what happened with my family, that there was a false accusation that destroyed those relationships, but she hasn't pushed for details. Said when I'm ready to tell her everything, she'll listen, but she's not going to pressure me. That level of respect, of understanding boundaries, that's what real support looks like. She didn't need to know every detail of my past to trust me in the present. She judged me based on my actions, my character, how I treated her and others. Novel concept, right? We have a good group of friends now. Couples mostly. People we met through work or hobbies. We do game nights, dinner parties, weekend trips. Normal stuff that I thought I'd never have again after everything fell apart. These people know me as the guy who's good at trivia, who makes terrible jokes, who's weirdly competitive about board games. Not as the guy who was accused of something terrible. That's the gift of starting over. You get to be whoever you are now, not whoever you were when your life exploded. Some people have told me I'm too unforgiving, that I should let it go and reconnect with my family. Other people say I'm completely justified, that what they did was unforgivable. Honestly, I don't care what anyone thinks. This isn't about right or wrong, or who's justified, or who's being reasonable. This is about self-preservation and mental health. I learned a hard lesson 3 years ago. I learned that people will turn on you in a heartbeat if the accusation is serious enough, that your history with someone means nothing when fear and outrage take over, that being innocent doesn't protect you from losing everything. Those are brutal lessons, but they're valuable ones. They taught me to be more careful, more selective, more protective of the life I build. I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived being completely destroyed and rebuilt my life from nothing. Lost my job, my reputation, my family, my friends, my home, everything. And I still got up every morning, went through the motions, kept pushing forward until those motions became real again. That's not something everyone can say. I'm proud of that strength, even though I wish I'd never had to develop it. I made new friends, found new family in the people who actually stood by me, created a life that doesn't depend on anyone who proved they couldn't be trusted. That's worth more to me than any family reunion or birthday party. Melissa is 19 now. I heard through social media that she's in college studying psychology. Part of me wonders if she's trying to understand why she did what she did. Part of me hopes she's learned, that she's grown into someone who thinks before acting. But that's a distant hope. the kind you have for strangers. Like hoping a celebrity turns their life around. Detached, impersonal. She's been in therapy consistently since the confession. I genuinely hope it helps her. Not for my sake, but for hers. Maybe she'll become a decent person. Maybe she already is one. Doesn't matter to me either way. Sarah reached out recently with a new approach. Melissa was struggling with severe anxiety and guilt. Her therapist suggested meeting might help. Sarah asked if I'd do a mediated conversation. Offered to pay. Do it anywhere, anytime. Just once. Just a chance for Melissa to say what she needed. I told her no. My life is peaceful now. I have a girlfriend I'm serious about. We talked about engagement last week. I'm up for another promotion. I play basketball Wednesday nights. I'm learning guitar. Trip to Colorado next month. Opening that door means inviting chaos back in. I'm not willing to do that. Every interaction with my former family has been draining, full of guilt trips and manipulation. I don't owe them anything. The last message I sent to Sarah was pretty clear. I told her I understood that Melissa was struggling, that I genuinely hoped she found peace and healing. But I also told her that my healing required distance from everyone involved, that I'd worked hard to build a life that didn't include them, and I wasn't going to compromise my mental health for theirs. I wished them well and asked them not to contact me again. She sent back a long message about closure, about how Melissa would never truly heal without facing me, about how I was being selfish. I didn't respond. Block that number too. She hasn't reached out since, at least not in any way I've noticed. That was 4 months ago. I know some people reading this will think I'm cold, maybe even cruel. They'll say a teenage girl made a mistake and I'm punishing her for life. But here's what they're missing. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just living my life without them in it. There's a difference. Punishment implies I'm actively trying to hurt them, that I'm seeking revenge or trying to make them suffer. I'm doing none of that. I'm just existing in my own space, building my own happiness, protecting my own peace. They feel punished because they want something from me that I'm not willing to give. That's their problem, not mine. My girlfriend knows the broad strokes of what happened, though not all the details. She asked me once if I ever missed my old family. I told her honestly that I missed the idea of them, the version that existed before I found out how little faith they had in me. But I don't miss the reality of who they actually were when it mattered. The people who stood by me when things got tough, those are the ones who matter now. She understood that completely. She comes from a complicated family situation herself, dealt with her own share of betrayal and disappointment growing up, so she gets that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. No guilt, no second guessing, just recognizing when a relationship is toxic and choosing yourself instead. We're talking about moving in together, maybe getting engaged next year, building something new, something that doesn't have the weight of betrayal hanging over it, something based on trust that's earned, not assumed. I saw my mom in public once, about a year ago. We were in the same grocery store, completely by chance. She saw me first, started walking toward me with this hopeful look on her face, like maybe enough time had passed that I'd be ready to talk. I turned and walked the other way without hesitation. Heard her call my name, but didn't turn around, didn't slow down, just kept walking until I was in a different aisle. It wasn't dramatic or emotional. I just didn't want to have that conversation in the middle of the produce section, didn't want to get into it surrounded by strangers buying vegetables. Got a text from her later that day. She said it hurt to see me walk away like that she just wanted to talk for a few minutes. I texted back that I understood, but I'd made my position clear and nothing had changed. She said she'd keep hoping I'd change my mind someday. I told her she was welcome to hope, but not to expect anything. That was the last direct contact we had. Recently, I found out through social media stalking by accident that Melissa posted something vague about forgiveness and learning from mistakes. Didn't mention me by name, but it was pretty obvious what she was talking about. Comments were full of people supporting her, saying everyone deserves forgiveness, that holding grudges is toxic. I didn't respond or react to the post. Didn't even care enough to feel annoyed. That's someone else's drama now. Someone else's story. I'm just living my life. My life now is pretty simple and straightforward, honestly. Work, gym, spending time with my girlfriend and our friend group, working on my hobbies. I picked up woodworking last year, built a bookshelf that actually turned out decent. Thinking about getting a dog. Normal stuff. Boring stuff. The kind of life people take for granted until they've had to rebuild it from scratch. People ask if I'll ever reconcile with my family. My answer is always the same. Never say never, but I'm not holding my breath. If reconciliation happens, it'll be because something fundamental changes, not because enough time has passed or because they've apologized enough. And honestly, I'm not sure what that fundamental change would even look like. Trust isn't something you can rebuild through apologies and time alone. It's rebuilt through consistent action over years, through proving you've changed, through demonstrating that you understand what you did wrong and why it matters. My family hasn't done any of that. They've just apologized and expected me to come back, like saying sorry is some magic reset button. It's not. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Story 4. I won millions. In the lottery and decided not to tell anyone. I asked my family for help as a test. Most of them suddenly couldn't lend a dime, but had no problem posting vacation photos. Only one person actually lent me a hand. Buckle up, Reddit. This is going to be a long one, but I promise it's worth the read. 3 years ago, my life changed forever, but not in the way you'd expect. Yeah, I won the lottery, but the real story is what happened next when I discovered who my family really was. Some backstory first, because context matters here. I, 36 male, live in Columbus, Ohio, and for most of my life, I was what you might call the extra sibling. Not the golden child, not the black sheep, just the forgettable middle kid that nobody really paid attention to. You know the type. Decent grades, stayed out of trouble, but never quite good enough to earn the spotlight. I worked as a diesel mechanic for a freight company, pulling 12-hour shifts in freezing garages, fixing big rigs. My supervisor was one of those old-school guys who thought screaming at employees was effective management. The pay was just enough to keep a small roof over my head in a duplex that had seen better days sometime around the Clinton administration. Now, my family situation was complicated. Let me introduce you to the cast of characters that made my childhood and young adulthood so delightful. My older brother Derek is 39 and has always been the golden boy. Our parents helped him buy a construction business right after college. Not a loan, mind you, but straight-up gift money for equipment, down payments, the works. This guy drives brand new trucks every couple of years, constantly posts those cringy, hustle and grind motivational quotes on Facebook, and genuinely believes he's a self-made success story. The cognitive dissonance is stunning. He acts like he built his empire from nothing when the foundation was literally paved with our parents' cash. Derek's the type who name-drops the cost of everything he owns in casual conversation. Yeah, just picked up this $80,000 truck, but you know how it is when business is booming. No, Derek, I don't know how it is, because some of us actually had to build our lives without a trust fund. Then there's my younger brother Kyle, who's 31 and still living in our parents' basement. He's perpetually between opportunities and always working on the next big thing, which translates to playing Call of Duty until 3 a.m. while mom brings him sandwiches cut into triangles, like he's still 7 years old. Kyle has this way of making unemployment sound like entrepreneurship. Every few months, he's got some revolutionary app idea or cryptocurrency scheme that's going to make him millions. Spoiler alert, none of them ever pan out. My sister Sarah is 33, a single mom working part-time at a hair salon. She's raising her 8-year-old daughter Emma, basically on her own, after her ex decided fatherhood wasn't for him and moved to Phoenix. Sarah struggles to make rent every month, but she never complains. She's the type who'll post pictures of Emma's school projects on Facebook with captions like, "So proud of my little artist," while wearing the same 3 outfits on rotation because she spends every spare dollar on her kid. And then there's me, the invisible one. When I lost my apartment at 28 because the landlord sold the building and didn't renew any leases, guess who didn't get offered a couch to crash on? That's right, the family that had a whole finished basement going unused except for Kyle's gaming setup. Instead, I spent 6 weeks sleeping in my truck in various parking lots around town, showering at the 24-hour gym, and trying to maintain some dignity while my life fell apart. The breaking point came a year later, when my truck's transmission died. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was an existential crisis. No truck meant no way to get to work, and no work meant no way to fix the truck. I was looking at a $3,200 repair bill with about $180 in my checking account. So I swallowed my pride and called Derek, explained the situation, asked for a loan, not a handout, a loan with interest and a payment plan. I even offered to work extra hours at his company to pay it back. Derek listened to my whole sob story, then started laughing. Not a chuckle, but full-blown laughter like I just told him the funniest joke he'd ever heard. "Maybe," he said between laughs, "it's time you accept that you're just not cut out for much. Some people are built for success, and others, well, others are built for other things." That sentence lodged itself in my brain like a splinter. For years afterward, every time something went wrong, every time I struggled, I could hear Derek's voice telling me I wasn't cut out for much. I ended up taking a payday loan at 400% interest to fix the truck. Spent the next 8 months paying it off, eating ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches to make ends meet. Fast forward to 3 years ago. It was a Friday night in February, and I'd just finished one of those shifts that makes you question your life choices. 12 hours of crawling under frozen trucks, getting hydraulic fluid in my hair, and listening to my supervisor blame me for problems that existed long before I clocked in. I stopped at a gas station on the way home, partly for gas and partly because the heater in my truck was acting up and I needed a few minutes in a warm building. The place was nearly empty, just me, the cashier, and some trucker grabbing energy drinks for an overnight haul. I had exactly $47 in my wallet, which had to last until the next paycheck. Gas took $35, leaving me with $12 for whatever food I could scrounge up for the weekend. But there, sitting behind the counter, was a display of scratch-off tickets. Now, I'm not usually a gambling man. I'd bought maybe 5 lottery tickets in my entire life, and they were all worthless. But something about that night, maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was Derek's voice still echoing in my head. Maybe it was just the cosmic joke of being 33 and having $12 to my name, made me pull out a $10 bill. "Give me one of those $10 tickets," I told the cashier, pointing to a game called Millionaires Club. He handed me the ticket and a penny to scratch with. I usually would have waited until I got home, but the truck was cold and the store was warm, so I scratched it right there at the counter. First box, $500,000. Okay, that's the grand prize amount. Nothing unusual there. Second box, $500,000. Weird coincidence, but still. Third box, $500,000. My heart started doing something irregular in my chest. I checked the rules on the back of the ticket, read them twice, then 3 times. 3 matching amounts wins that amount. I had just won $500,000. But wait, it gets better. Because when I looked more carefully at the ticket, I realized I was reading it wrong. This wasn't a $500,000 prize. This was a $20 million prize, which after taxes came out to $13.4 million. I stood there in that gas station for probably 5 minutes, staring at the ticket, waiting for the number to change or for someone to tell me it was a mistake. The cashier asked if I was okay. The trucker asked if I needed to sit down. I mumbled something about needing air and stumbled outside to my truck. Sitting in the parking lot with the engine running, I stared at that ticket until my eyes hurt. I took pictures of it with my phone from every angle. I Googled the Lottery Commission's phone number and called their 24-hour validation line, punching in the serial number with shaking fingers. "Congratulations," the automated voice said. "This appears to be a winning ticket. Please contact our office during business hours to begin the claim process." I drove home in complete silence, not even turning on the radio. In my apartment, I put the ticket in a Ziploc bag, then put that bag inside another Ziploc bag, then put both bags in a fireproof safe I'd bought years earlier for important documents. Then I sat on my couch and stared at the wall until sunrise. The lottery office opened at 8 a.m. on Monday. I was there at 7:45, first in line, wearing my cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt I'd bought for a job interview 2 years earlier. The process was surprisingly straightforward, but took the entire week. Lawyers, financial advisors, tax specialists. Suddenly, I had a whole team of professionals whose job was to make sure I didn't blow through $13.4 million like one of those cautionary tales you see on reality TV. My financial advisor was this no-nonsense woman who'd been managing lottery winners for 15 years. First thing she told me, the money won't change who you are, but it will reveal who everyone else is. We set up a trust, diversified the investments, created multiple income streams. Conservative estimates put my annual income at around $600,000 without touching the principal. Even if I lived lavishly, the money would last forever. But here's the thing. I didn't want to live lavishly. Not yet anyway. I kept going to work that whole week, kept living in my crappy duplex, kept driving my beat-up Silverado. The only difference was that I'd catch myself smiling at random moments, like when my supervisor would scream at me about productivity quotas, or when I'd see Derek's latest Facebook post about his empire, because I had a plan forming in my head, a plan that would answer a question that had been eating at me for years. If I really needed help, if my life depended on it, would my family be there for me? I was about to find out. 2 weeks after claiming the lottery, I started my little experiment. I called my parents first, figuring I'd start with the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. "Dad," I said when he answered, "I need to talk to you about something serious." I told them my shop had been cutting hours for months, and they'd finally laid me off. I said my truck's transmission was acting up again, and this time the repair would cost more than the vehicle was worth. I mentioned that my landlord was raising rent, and I couldn't afford the increase on unemployment benefits. My dad listened to the whole story, then launched into a lecture about tough times building character and how real men find a way to make things work. My mom chimed in with helpful suggestions like, "Have you tried praying about it?" And "Everything happens for a reason." When I directly asked if they could help me get back on my feet, maybe let me stay in Kyle's old room for a few weeks while I job hunted, the conversation got uncomfortable fast. "Son," Dad said, "your mother and I are on a fixed income. We can't be supporting grown children who should be supporting themselves." This from the man who'd written Derek a $75,000 check for business equipment just 3 years earlier. "We'll pray for you," Mom added, "but you need to learn to handle your own problems." I thanked them for their time and hung up. 1 down, 3 to go. Derek was next. I called him the following evening, right around dinner time when I knew he'd be home. "Bro," I said, putting on my best desperate voice, "I'm in real trouble here." I gave him the same story. Lost job, broken truck, eviction looming. I asked if maybe I could work for his company, just temporarily, while I got back on my feet. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You know what? I might have something for you." My heart jumped. Maybe I'd misjudged him. Maybe blood really was thicker than water. "I need someone to clean the office and workshop after hours," he continued. "It's $8 an hour, maybe 15 hours a week, just so you're not sitting around feeling sorry for yourself." $8 an hour. The federal minimum wage was $7.25, so technically he was being generous with that extra 75 cents. "Derek," I said, "I was making $22 an hour at the shop. I've got 15 years of mechanical experience. Don't you have any actual mechanic work?" "Look," he said, and I could hear that condescending tone creeping in. "Beggars can't be choosers. Take the janitor job or don't, but stop expecting handouts just because we're related." Handouts. Like asking for work was the same as asking for charity. I told him I'd think about it and hung up. Kyle's response was exactly what I expected. "Dang, bro, that really sucks. I'd help if I could, but you know how it is." "Yeah, Kyle, I know exactly how it is. You're 31 years old and your biggest expense is Xbox Live. But Sarah was different. I called her last, partly because I was hoping I wouldn't need to drag her into this test, and partly because I already knew she'd try to help even though she couldn't afford to. "Oh my God," she said when I finished explaining my fake crisis. "Why didn't you call me first?" Before I could answer, she was already making plans. Could I come over that night? Did I need food? Did I have warm clothes? "I don't have much," she said, "but I've got $60 in my emergency fund, and you can have it. And my couch is always open for as long as you need." $60. This from someone who was choosing between groceries and gas money every week. "Sarah, I can't take your emergency money." "Yes, you can," she interrupted. "That's what family does. We take care of each other." She drove over that same night with the cash, a bag of groceries, and a container of leftover spaghetti and meatballs. She made up my couch with her own sheets and pillows, gave me a spare key to her place, and told me not to worry about anything except getting back on my feet. That $60 was worth more to me than all $13 million in the bank. While my family thought I was struggling to find work, I was actually building something I dreamed about for years. Using a shell company, I bought a small warehouse on the outskirts of town. Nothing fancy, just 8,000 square feet of concrete floors and high ceilings. I converted it into a custom truck and off-road vehicle shop. Not just repairs, but full custom builds. Lift kits, performance engines, custom paint jobs, the works. It was everything I'd wanted to do, but never had the capital to attempt. My first 2 employees were Dave and Manny, guys I'd worked with at the freight company. These were the co-workers who'd given me rides when my truck was in the shop, who'd covered my lunch when I was broke, who'd actually treated me like a human being instead of a nuisance. When I offered them jobs at double their previous salary plus full health benefits, Dave literally started crying. Manny asked if I was serious 3 times before he'd even look at the contract. "How did you get the money for all this?" Dave asked, gesturing around the shop. "I got lucky," I told him, which was technically true. Setting up the business took 6 months of careful planning. Business licenses, insurance, equipment, inventory. I had to learn more about entrepreneurship in 6 months than Derek had learned in his entire pampered life. The best part was how invisible I remained. Everyone knew the new shop existed, but nobody connected it to me. I was just some guy who disappeared after getting laid off, presumably moved to another city to find work. Meanwhile, I kept playing the struggling unemployed brother when I had to interact with family. I'd show up to Sarah's place every few days, always looking slightly defeated, always grateful for whatever help she offered. She never once made me feel like a burden. During one of these visits, she mentioned that Derek's business was starting to have problems. Customer complaints were increasing, projects were running over budget, and he'd had to let 2 guys go the previous month. He's stressed all the time now, she said. The other day he snapped at Emma just for being a kid. I told him if he ever talks to my daughter that way again, family or not, we're done. This was interesting information. Very interesting. About 8 months into my unemployment, I did something that felt better than winning the lottery itself. I bought Sarah a house. Not a mansion, nothing that would raise questions, just a modest 3-bedroom brick house in a safe neighborhood with good schools. It had a fenced backyard where Emma could play, a 2-car garage, and most importantly, it was in a school district that would give Emma opportunities Sarah had never dreamed of. I had my financial advisor structure it through a dummy corporation, then had my lawyer approach Sarah with a story about being selected for a single mother housing assistance program that covered the full purchase price. Sarah was suspicious at first. She's not naive, and free houses don't just fall from the sky. But when my lawyer showed her all the official-looking paperwork and explained that she'd been recommended by someone who wished to remain anonymous, she broke down crying in his office. The day she and Emma moved in, I happened to drive by while they were carrying boxes. Sarah saw me and ran over to the car, practically bouncing with excitement. "Can you believe this?" she said, gesturing at the house. "Emma's going to have her own room with a window that looks out on the backyard. And there's a bathtub, not just a shower. I haven't had a bathtub in 5 years." Watching her happiness, knowing I was responsible for it, was worth more than any revenge I was planning. By the 1-year mark, Derek's construction business was in serious trouble. Social media posts about success and grinding had stopped entirely. The shiny new truck had been replaced by a 3-year-old model. Word was getting around town that his company was missing deadlines and going over budget on every job. That's when he called me. "Hey, little brother," he said, using a tone I hadn't heard from him in years. The fake friendly voice he used when he wanted something. "I heard you might still be looking for work." I'd been unemployed for almost a year at this point, living off what family assumed were unemployment benefits and odd jobs. "I'm listening," I said. "My business is, well, let's call it in a growth phase. Lots of opportunities, but I need someone I can trust to help me take things to the next level. I was thinking maybe we could be partners." Partners. That was rich. "What kind of partnership?" I asked. "Well, I'd still be the primary owner, obviously, since it's my company and my reputation on the line. But I could see giving you maybe a 5% stake in exchange for a significant investment." "How significant?" $400,000 should do it. It's a bargain, really, considering what the company's worth. $400,000. From someone he thought was unemployed and desperate. "Derek," I said slowly, "where exactly do you think I'd get $400,000? "I don't know, man. Bank loan, investor, whatever. You're a smart guy when you apply yourself. Figure it out." The audacity was breathtaking. And what would I get for this investment, besides 5% ownership? Experience mainly. Learning how to run a real business from someone who's actually successful. Think of it as paying for an education. I told him I'd think about it and call him back. Instead, I spent the next week having Derek's business thoroughly investigated. Financial records, client satisfaction surveys, outstanding debts, pending legal issues. I wanted to know everything. The results were worse than I'd expected. Derek owed money to suppliers, had 3 different clients threatening lawsuits, and was about 6 weeks away from bankruptcy. His $400,000 investment opportunity was actually a desperate attempt to stay afloat. But here's the thing about desperate people. They make stupid decisions. I called Derek back and told him I'd found an investor willing to put up the money. We agreed to meet at a steakhouse downtown to discuss terms. Derek showed up to dinner in a leased BMW that probably cost more per month than most people's rent. He ordered the most expensive steak on the menu and spent the first 20 minutes telling me about his latest vacation plans and some new equipment he was thinking about buying. I let him talk, ordered a modest meal, and waited for him to get around to business. "So," he finally said, cutting into his $60 ribeye, "tell me about this investor of yours." "He's someone I've been talking to," I said. "Very interested in construction, has cash available, and is looking for the right opportunity." "What's his background?" "Various businesses. He likes to stay low profile." Derek nodded like this made perfect sense. "Smart. I'm the same way. So what are we talking about here?" "The full 400. He'd prefer to buy the company outright," I said. "Sees more potential in ownership than partnership." Derek's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Buy it outright? This company's worth millions." "How much exactly?" At least 2 million, maybe 3. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and slid it across the table. Derek's expression went from confidence to confusion to shock as he stared at the screen showing a balance of $8.2 million. I had it appraised, I said quietly. Professional evaluation, 3 different firms. They all came back with the same number, $85,000. Derek's face went through several color changes. That's impossible. I've put years of work into this company. Years of work that led to customer complaints, lawsuits, and bankruptcy. Derek, you're 6 weeks away from losing everything. He was quiet for a long moment, still staring at my phone. How did you... Does it matter? Here's what I'm offering. $85,000, cash, for 100% ownership. You can stay on as a project manager with a competitive salary. Project manager? It's my company. It was your company. Now it's just debt and bad reputation. Take the deal, Derek, because it's the only one you're getting. Derek signed the papers 3 days later. He didn't have a choice. It was either sell to me or declare bankruptcy and lose everything anyway. The transition was swift and comprehensive. I kept the good employees and let go of the dead weight. I settled the outstanding debts and lawsuits. Most importantly, I restructured everything to actually serve customers instead of just enriching the owner. Derek's first day as my employee was educational for both of us. He showed up at his usual time, 10 a.m. because owners don't punch clocks, and headed straight for his old corner office. I intercepted him in the hallway. Morning, Derek. Your workspace is over here. I led him to a desk in the main room, right in the middle of everything. Where's my office? I converted it into a conference room. Much better use of space. His company Audi was gone, replaced by a basic work truck like everyone else drove. His expense account was canceled. His special parking spot became visitor parking. But the real change was his salary, from $120,000 a year down to $55,000. The same as the other project managers, which was actually generous considering his recent performance. This is temporary, right? He asked after I explained his new compensation package. Until you see how valuable I am to operations. Derek, I said, your value to operations will determine everything about your employment here. Perform well, and you'll be treated well. Underperform, and you'll be replaced. For the first time in our adult lives, Derek had to actually work for his money. While Derek was adjusting to life as a regular employee, I was making some other changes. Sarah had always been good with numbers and organization, skills that were wasted cutting hair for tips and doing part-time bookkeeping for small businesses. I offered her the position of operations director at a salary that doubled what she'd been making at the salon. She almost didn't believe me at first. I don't have experience running construction projects, she said. You have experience managing a household on no budget, raising a child alone, and keeping multiple part-time jobs organized. Trust me, you're overqualified. Sarah turned out to be exactly what the company needed. She instituted systems for tracking projects, improved communication with clients, and somehow managed to keep Derek from screwing up the jobs he was assigned to. Watching Derek take orders from our little sister was perhaps the most satisfying part of my revenge. For 33 years, he'd treated Sarah like she was invisible, just another family member who didn't matter. Now she was his boss, and she was better at the job than he'd ever been. Sarah never abused her authority, but she didn't coddle him either. When Derek tried to cut corners on a project, Sarah shut it down. When he showed up late, she documented it. When he complained about his new circumstances, she reminded him that having a job was better than unemployment. About 6 months into the new arrangement, Kyle started sniffing around for opportunities. He'd heard through the family grapevine that I was doing better and had even started some kind of business. He showed up at the shop one morning with a resume printed on copy paper and what I can only describe as audacious confidence. Thought you might need some extra hands, he said, looking around at the equipment and vehicles. I've got some ideas for improving efficiency. Kyle's resume was a work of creative fiction. He'd listed entrepreneurial ventures as his primary experience and described his basement gaming setup as remote digital marketing operations. What exactly do you think you could contribute here? I asked. Well, I've been researching the industry, and I think you're missing some key opportunities in the digital space. Social media marketing, online customer acquisition, that sort of thing. This from someone who's never held a job for more than 3 months. Kyle, I said, this is a construction and custom vehicle business. Our clients care about quality work, not hashtags. That's exactly the kind of thinking that keeps small businesses small, he replied, apparently unaware that he was lecturing someone whose small business was already more successful than anything he'd ever attempted. I told him we were fully staffed and didn't need additional help. He left disappointed but not defeated. Kyle's optimism is impervious to reality. By month 8, Derek was struggling. The work was harder than he remembered, the hours were longer than he was used to, and the lack of special treatment was wearing on him. It all came to a head during a client meeting. Derek had promised a client we could complete their project in half the time it would actually take, apparently forgetting that he no longer had the authority to make such commitments. When the client called to confirm the timeline, Sarah had to explain that Derek had misstated our capabilities, and the realistic completion date was twice what he'd promised. The client was not happy. They came to the shop for a face-to-face meeting, and let's just say they expressed their displeasure loudly and in detail. Derek tried to deflect blame onto miscommunication and new management procedures, but it was clear to everyone present that he'd simply lied to try to secure the contract. After the client left, I called Derek into my office. "That was unacceptable," I said. "Look, sometimes you have to tell clients what they want to hear to get the job. Then you figure out how to make it work." "No, Derek. Sometimes you have to tell clients the truth so they can make informed decisions. What you did was dishonest and unprofessional. Since when do you lecture me about business? 6 months ago you were unemployed and desperate." There it was. The real Derek, the one who'd been hiding behind forced politeness since I'd bought his company. And now I own a successful business while you're an employee who just cost us a client. Funny how things change. Derek's face went red. "This is my company. I built this from nothing. You built this into nothing. I'm rebuilding it into something. And if you can't accept that, you're welcome to find employment elsewhere. You can't fire me. I'm your brother. I can fire anyone who doesn't do their job properly. Being my brother just means I gave you more chances than I'd give anyone else." Derek stormed out of my office and didn't come back for 3 days. When Derek finally returned, he was different. The pretense of cooperation was gone, replaced by barely concealed resentment and defiance. He started showing up late regularly. His work quality declined. He began making snide comments to other employees about family businesses and lucky breaks. Meanwhile, my parents had caught wind of the situation and were not pleased. They called me on a Tuesday evening, both on speakerphone for maximum impact. "What's this we hear about you humiliating your brother?" Mom asked. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Derek says you bought his company just to torture him," Dad added. "Says you're making him work like a common laborer. Derek is working as a project manager, same as the other project managers. If he has complaints about his treatment, he can address them through proper channels." "This is ridiculous," Mom said. "Family should support each other, not tear each other down." The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. "You're absolutely right, Mom. Family should support each other." Where was that support when I was sleeping in my truck? Where was it when I needed help with basic transportation to keep working? That was different. No, it wasn't. The only difference is that now I have the power to help or not help, and I'm choosing to base that decision on how I was treated when I had nothing. Dad's voice got stern. "You're being petty and vindictive. I'm being consistent. Derek is still employed, still earning a living wage, still has opportunities to prove himself. That's more support than I ever received from this family." The conversation ended badly, with my parents insisting I was destroying the family, and me pointing out that the family had already been destroyed by years of favoritism and neglect. Derek lasted another month before he reached his breaking point. He came into my office on a Friday afternoon with an ultimatum. "I want my old role back," he announced. "Full authority, executive salary, company car. This experiment has gone on long enough." I leaned back in my chair and studied him. He looked tired, defeated, but still somehow entitled. "What experiment? This whole thing where you pretend to be the boss. We both know I'm the one with the experience and connections. Give me back control, and I'll consider letting you stay on as a partner." The audacity was stunning. Even in defeat, Derek couldn't imagine a world where he wasn't the center of everything. "Derek," I said slowly, "let me make sure I understand. You want me to give you back the company I bought from you, restore the salary and benefits that were bankrupting the business, and accept a junior role in the company I've spent 8 months rebuilding?" When you put it like that, it sounds unreasonable, but it doesn't just sound unreasonable, Derek. It is unreasonable. Here's what I'm prepared to offer. You can continue working here as a project manager, following the same rules as everyone else, or you can find employment elsewhere. Those are your options. Derek's face went through a range of emotions: anger, disbelief, desperation, and finally resignation. "You really think you're better than me now, don't you?" "I think I'm more successful than you now. Whether that makes me better is a different question." "This isn't over," he said, heading for the door. "Actually, Derek, it is. And if you decide to leave, don't expect a reference letter." Derek walked out that day and never came back. He didn't even clean out his desk, just disappeared like a bad employee who knows he's about to be fired. I heard through the family grapevine that he'd found work at a rival construction company, but as a basic site supervisor, making about half what I'd been paying him. His girlfriend, the one who'd been attracted to his success, apparently decided that dating a middle management employee wasn't as appealing as dating a business owner. Within 2 months, Derek had moved into a smaller apartment in a less desirable part of town. His social media presence, once filled with humble brags and luxury purchases, went silent entirely. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, just the quiet contentment of a problem that had solved itself. 6 months later, my parents attempted one final intervention. They invited me to Sunday dinner, the first invitation I'd received in over 2 years, and sat me down for what they probably thought would be a come-to-Jesus conversation. "Derek's struggling," Mom said. "His health is suffering from the stress. He's lost weight, looks tired all the time," Dad added. "This feud needs to end." "There's no feud," I said. "Derek made choices, and those choices had consequences. He's free to make different choices anytime he wants." "You could rehire him," Mom suggested. "Give him another chance." I gave him several chances. He chose not to take advantage of them. "But he's family," she said, as if that magic word solved everything. "So am I," replied. "So is Sarah. Funny how being family didn't matter when I needed help, but suddenly it's important now that Derek needs help." They tried several more approaches: guilt, obligation, family unity, but nothing landed. Finally, Dad played what he thought was his trump card. "We're disappointed in you," he said. "This isn't how we raised you." "You're right," I said. "You raised me to accept whatever scraps I was thrown and be grateful for them. You raised me to believe that my needs didn't matter as long as Derek was taken care of. But somewhere along the way, I learned that I deserved better." I left that dinner early and haven't been back since. While Derek was struggling with his new reality, Sarah was thriving. She'd taken to business management like a natural, implementing systems and procedures that had increased our efficiency by 30% in the first year. Emma was excelling in her new school, making friends, joining activities that would have been impossible in their old situation. Sarah had enrolled in some business courses at the community college and was talking about maybe pursuing a degree. "I never thought I was smart enough for college," she told me one day. "Growing up, I always felt like the dumb one compared to you and Derek." "Orpe, you were never the dumb one," I said. "You were just the one nobody invested in." Sarah is now making more money than Derek ever did, has a house she owns outright, and most importantly, has the confidence that comes from knowing she earned everything she has. Story 5. My wife got back in shape and decided she could do better than me, so she filed for divorce but quickly regretted it. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. What's up everyone? It's Dave here. Buckle up because my life turned into a wild mess not long ago. I'm 34, just your average warehouse manager living in Columbus. My life wasn't flashy, but it was steady. I had a good job, a nice house, and I was married to Carla. We'd been together for 5 years, married for 3, and I thought we had a decent thing going. Sure, we weren't that lovey-dovey couple from TV, but we made it work. Bills got paid, we had our date nights, and the occasional argument was just normal marriage stuff, or so I thought. About 6 months ago, Carla decided to go on a big fitness journey. It came out of nowhere, but I was on board. She joined this upscale gym downtown that honestly looked more like a spa than a gym. She got herself a personal trainer, Justin, and suddenly started talking about meal prep, macros, and detox plans. I didn't mind. In fact, I encouraged her. I mean, everyone deserves to feel good about themselves, right? Plus, I figured it was just a phase, like her short-lived knitting hobby or that time she got into tarot cards. At first, I even pitched in to help her. I started taking on more of the chores, dishes, laundry, groceries, so she'd have more time to focus on her workouts. I thought it was a way to show her I cared. But slowly, things started to shift, and not in a good way. The more weight Carla lost, the bigger her ego grew. She became obsessed with her reflection, spending hours in front of the mirror tweaking her gym outfits or snapping the perfect progress pic for Instagram. She wasn't just doing this for herself, she wanted an audience. I remember this one time when I suggested we watch a movie together. It was a Friday night, and I thought we could relax like old times. She scoffed. "Dave, I don't have time to sit around. I have goals to crush." Goals? What goals? We weren't talking about running a marathon or climbing Mount Everest. She was just lifting weights and drinking green sludge. But whatever, I shrugged it off. Maybe I was being the unreasonable one. Then came the morning. It started like any other. I was half asleep, nursing my coffee before heading to work, while Carla was downing her usual kale spinach disaster smoothie. She was dressed in her workout gear, scrolling through her phone like her life depended on it. Out of nowhere, she says, "I deserve more in life." I looked up, still groggy. Huh? More of what? She put her smoothie down and stared at me, all serious. "This marriage is holding me back, Dave. I'm filing for divorce." I swear I thought it was a joke. I even laughed, thinking she was messing with me. But she wasn't laughing. Her face was stone cold. "I've outgrown this," she said, like I was some outdated piece of furniture she was ready to toss. "You wouldn't understand." I sat there, completely blindsided. My wife, the woman I'd shared years of my life with, just dropped this on me like it was no big deal. I tried to process her words, but all I could feel was this mix of shock and anger boiling in my chest. "What do you mean you've outgrown this?" "Outgrown what?" She sighed, like I was a child asking too many questions. "Dave, I've been working on myself, trying to be the best version of me. And frankly, this life doesn't match my potential anymore. I want more than this house, this routine, this you." Her words hit me. She didn't even sugarcoat it. I was part of the problem in her eyes. The life we'd built together wasn't good enough for her anymore. She grabbed her gym bag and walked out the door without so much as a goodbye. I sat there, staring at the half-empty glass of green sludge she left behind, wondering what the hell just happened. That day at work was a blur. I went through the motions, but my mind was stuck on Carla. Was this real? Was she actually leaving me? We'd had arguments before, sure, but divorce? It felt so sudden, so calculated. And the way she said it, like she'd been rehearsing this speech for weeks, made it clear she'd already made up her mind. Over the next few days, the cracks in our marriage became glaringly obvious. She barely spoke to me unless it was about dividing up the house or setting up mediation. She started staying out late, claiming she was at the gym or with friends. Her phone was glued to her hand, and her Instagram was blowing up with selfies and captions like, "New chapter, who dis?" and "Living my best life." Every post was a slap in the face, a reminder that she'd already moved on mentally, even if the papers weren't signed yet. One night, while scrolling through my own social media, I noticed she'd deleted every picture of us. Wedding photos? Gone. Anniversary posts? Erased. It was like I'd been scrubbed from her life entirely. Meanwhile, her new posts were racking up likes and comments from people hyping her up. "You're glowing!" Such an inspiration. It made me sick. None of these people knew the real Carla, or what she was putting me through. Another night, I overheard her on the phone while I was getting ready for work. She was in the kitchen, talking to someone in that fake, sugary voice she used when she wanted something. "Yeah, I just feel so free now," she said. "I'm finally doing what makes me happy." She paused, then giggled. "He doesn't even get it. He's stuck in the past." That was the moment it hit me. Carla wasn't just leaving me. She was reinventing herself, and I was the anchor she was cutting loose. But here's the thing. I'm not the kind of guy to just roll over and take it. She thought she could steamroll me and walk away with everything, but she was in for a rude awakening. This was only the beginning, and if Carla wanted a fight, she'd get one. But wait, it gets worse. One afternoon, I'm grabbing lunch at this cafe near work. I'm minding my business, scrolling through my phone, when I overhear these two dudes at the next table. They're talking about some fitness babe they found online. I didn't pay much attention until one of them said her name, Carla. My stomach dropped. They were laughing, talking about how she had some premium content she was promoting. At first, I thought, no way, not Carla. But then one of them showed her Instagram on his phone. It was her, my Carla. They went on about how she'd started teasing an OnlyFans account, posting links in her bio like, for the real workouts. My blood boiled. This wasn't just some fitness phase. She was using her newfound freedom to become a full-blown thirst trap for money. When I got home, I confronted her. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. "Carla," I said, trying to keep my cool. "What the hell is this OnlyFans thing I'm hearing about?" She looked up, completely unfazed. "It's my body, Dave, my choice, and it's none of your business anymore." I couldn't believe her nerve. "None of my business? We're still married. You're out here selling yourself on the internet while I'm trying to hold our lives together." She rolled her eyes, like I was some outdated fossil who just didn't get it. "It's not selling myself. It's content creation. Plenty of people do it. Besides, it's not like you're paying my bills anymore." That's when it hit me. Carla didn't just want a divorce. She wanted a whole new life. One where she was the star, the main character, and I was just some extra she'd written off. She wasn't embarrassed or apologetic. If anything, she was proud, like she'd finally found her true calling as an online spectacle. Over the next few weeks, her antics escalated. She started dressing like she was auditioning for a reality show. Tight dresses, sky-high heels, makeup caked on like frosting. Every time she walked out the door, she looked like she was heading to some red carpet event, not the grocery store. And the captions? They got worse. Living my truth. No more holding back. And the one that made me want to throw my phone. She's not a wife anymore. She's a force of nature. The audacity. While Carla was out playing celebrity, I was stuck dealing with the fallout. Lawyers, paperwork, etc. But Carla wasn't as untouchable as she thought. My lawyer, Steve, absolute legend, had been doing some digging. Turns out she's been seeing a gold digger. But with a gym membership, I think you could guess whom I'm talking about. Stay tuned, folks. Things are about to get messy. I'll update you ASAP. Update 1. What's up again, Reddit? It's Dave, your favorite soon-to-be divorced dude with a front-row seat to my ex's drama-fueled glow-up disaster. If you've been keeping up, you know my wife Carla decided she was too good for this life, left me high and dry, and has been parading around town like she's some fitness celebrity. But let's talk about the guy who's been fueling this whole mess. Justin. Yep, her personal trainer. Real original, right? The second I heard his name, I knew this wasn't just some innocent trainer-client relationship. Justin was the type of guy you'd expect to see on a reality dating show. Shredded, spray-tanned, and about as deep as a puddle. He was all charm, muscles, and smirks, like he walked out of a bad rom-com. Carla wasn't subtle about their connection either. One day, she strutted in the house after her workout, practically glowing. Justin says I'm the strongest I've ever been, she bragged, not even looking at me. Yeah, Carla, I'm sure Justin also told you he's never trained anyone like you before, because that's his script. A few weeks later, she stopped pretending it was just workouts. She started dropping his name in casual conversations. Justin's taking me to this new vegan restaurant. Or, Justin said this protein powder is life-changing. Meanwhile, I'm standing there like, do I look like I care? But Carla wasn't just name-dropping. She was flaunting him like he was her prize. Word spread fast. Friends started texting me with sightings of Carla and Justin all over town. They were holding hands, laughing, and acting like some Instagram couple of the year. Carla didn't even try to hide it. One night, she came home, bold as ever, and said, just so you know, Justin and I are dating now. I think it's time you accept that. Oh, I accepted it, all right. Accepted that my wife had turned into a full-blown caricature of entitlement. She'd already mentally divorced me. So what did it matter to her if she added a public affair to her resume? The more I learned about Justin, the more my blood boiled. He wasn't just your average gym bro. This guy had a history. My lawyer, Steve, who deserves a damn medal at this point, did some digging and found out Justin had pulled this stunt before. Twice, actually. He had a pattern. Find a married woman, pump her up with compliments and validation, and encourage her to leave her husband. Then, once the dust settled and the money wasn't flowing, he'd vanish like Houdini. Justin was a professional homewrecker. It wasn't love. It was a hustle. He hyped these women up, made them feel invincible, and rode their wave until it wasn't convenient anymore. And Carla? She was the perfect mark. She craved attention and validation like a fish craves water. Justin had her wrapped around his finger, and she didn't even see it. The worst part was how smug he was about it. I heard from mutual acquaintances that Justin was already talking about their big plans. He apparently told someone, once the divorce is finalized, Carla and I are going to build an empire. Empire? Dude, you're a trainer, not a tech mogul. But sure, dream big. Justin wasn't just banking on Carla's money. He was banking on my money. Carla was demanding half my savings, spousal support, and even trying to take the house. She thought she could waltz into court, play the victim, and walk away with a golden ticket for her and Justin's new life. Little did she know, my lawyer had receipts, and I wasn't about to roll over. Let me paint you a picture of what Carla and Justin looked like as a couple. Imagine a guy who only owns tank tops, standing next to a woman who suddenly thinks she's a Kardashian. They were all over social media, posing in front of fancy cars, not theirs, and tagging themselves at expensive restaurants. I'm guessing Carla was footing the bill. It was like they were trying to scream, "Look at us, we're winning!" But to anyone with half a brain, it was clear they were overcompensating. Their relationship wasn't without cracks, though. Justin's over-the-top personality started to clash with Carla's growing diva complex. One night, I heard her on the phone in the kitchen, arguing with someone. I don't care what your exes said about you, Justin. You're with me now, and I deserve better than your baggage. I didn't catch the rest, but it was enough to tell me their little fantasy wasn't as perfect as they wanted everyone to believe. As much as it pissed me off, there was something oddly satisfying about watching Carla go all in on Justin. She'd bet everything on this guy, thinking he was her ticket to a better life, and it was only a matter of time before the house of cards came crashing down. My lawyer and I were making sure of that. After mediation, Carla's confidence took a hit. She walked into that room acting like Beyoncé and walked out looking like a deer in headlights. It was beautiful. Justin, her ever-loyal hype man, didn't even try to comfort her. He just sulked behind her, scrolling on his phone. That was my first clue that their little empire wasn't as solid as Carla wanted everyone to believe. But let's rewind a bit. Mediation wasn't just a setback for Carla. It was a disaster. She thought she was going to come in, cry a little, and walk out with the house, half my savings, and spousal support. Carla's lawyer painted this picture of her as the underappreciated wife who sacrificed everything for my mediocre dreams. Mediocre dreams? I've been working my ass off at this warehouse job for years. Steve, my lawyer, was ready. He had spreadsheets, screenshots, and even credit card statements to back me up. Carla had been burning through our joint account for months before she filed for divorce. We're talking luxury spa days, designer clothes, and $200 dinners, while I was eating leftovers and trying to figure out what went wrong. Steve made sure the court saw every penny she wasted. Then came Justin's skeletons, his past affairs, his pattern of sweet-talking married women, and how he always bailed when the money didn't flow like he expected. The cherry on top? Steve found messages from one of Justin's exes, warning Carla to be careful. Of course, Carla didn't listen. She thought she was different. Justin's smirk was gone, too. In fact, he looked downright uncomfortable. He probably realized his little scam was unraveling in real time. Carla tried to defend him, saying, "Justin isn't like that anymore." But the evidence was stacked against them. The judge wasn't buying their act. By the end of the session, it was clear Carla wasn't going to walk away with the fortune she thought she'd get. Justin? He looked like he was already planning his exit strategy. After mediation, Carla started acting off. She wasn't as smug anymore. She still tried to post her motivational nonsense on Instagram, but the captions got desperate. Instead of living my best life, it was stuff like, growth isn't always easy, but it's worth it. Yeah, sure, Carla. Keep telling yourself that. Justin, on the other hand, was showing his true colors. He was still around, but he wasn't as present as Carla made him out to be. He started skipping out on their public appearances. No more hand-holding at fancy restaurants or couple goals gym pics. Word got around that he was already flirting with one of his other clients, a younger woman who apparently didn't come with Carla's baggage. Typical. One night, Carla came home late. I was still living in the house with her at the time, because legally I couldn't kick her out, and she stumbled in looking absolutely drained. I didn't say a word. I just sat there on the couch watching her. She plopped her designer bag on the counter and sighed dramatically, like she wanted me to ask what was wrong. But I wasn't playing that game. I just went to my room. The next morning, Carla tried to act like everything was fine. She walked around the kitchen, making one of her kale smoothies, but her usual smugness was gone. "Justin's been busy with his clients," she said, out of nowhere. I didn't respond. I knew she wanted me to bite, to ask about him, but I wasn't giving her the satisfaction. A week later, the real drama started. I got a call from Steve. Apparently, Carla had filed some last-minute paperwork, trying to claim more assets. She wanted emotional compensation for the stress I'd caused her during the marriage. Yes, you read that right. Carla thought she could get more money by blaming me for her midlife crisis. I couldn't believe the audacity. Steve, being the legend that he is, had already prepared for this nonsense. He filed a countersuit, showing how Carla had drained our accounts and emotionally manipulated the situation to her advantage. He even included her Instagram posts as evidence. The captions alone were gold, proof that she wasn't some stressed-out victim, but a self-absorbed diva living her best life at my expense. Around this time, Justin officially went MIA. He stopped showing up to their gym sessions, stopped answering her calls, and even blocked her on Instagram. Yes, blocked. Carla was losing it. I could hear her pacing around the house, calling him over and over. "Justin, call me back. We need to talk." She sounded desperate, and honestly, it was satisfying. Eventually, one of her friends spilled the tea. Justin had moved on to another client, someone younger, flashier, and most importantly, not tied up in a messy divorce. Carla was devastated. She tried to play it cool, posting cryptic quotes like, "Sometimes people aren't who they seem, and you can't build an empire with someone who's playing games." But everyone knew what had happened. Her perfect man had bailed the second things got tough. This was when Carla's entitlement really started to crumble. She stopped going to the gym. Her once glamorous outfits were replaced by sweats and messy buns. She even stopped posting on Instagram for a while, which was honestly shocking. It was like her entire identity had been tied to Justin and the fantasy of their new life, and without him, she didn't know what to do. One evening, she tried to talk to me. "Dave," she said, standing in the doorway of the living room, "I think we need to reevaluate everything. This divorce is It's been hard on both of us. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. What are you getting at, Carla? She sighed dramatically, like she was the victim here. I just think maybe we rushed into all of this. I mean, we had good times, didn't we? I almost laughed. Carla, you filed for divorce. You told me I was holding you back, remember? Now that Justin's gone, you're having second thoughts? Unbelievable. She tried to play the sympathy card, talking about how lonely she was and how much she'd sacrificed for this marriage. But I wasn't buying it. Carla, I said, cutting her off, you made your bed. Now lie in it. Carla's little fantasy world was falling apart, and I didn't have to lift a finger. Karma was doing all the work. That's it for now, Reddit. I'll update you after the final court decision, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Update 2. Hey Reddit, Dave back again. You've stuck with me this long, so get ready for the grand slam of this whole mess. If you've been keeping up, Carla, my ex-wife, thought she could dive into court, take everything, and start her new life with Justin, her personal trainer. But karma came calling, and now we're in the final stretch. Let me tell you how the courtroom drama played out, and why Carla probably wishes she'd never stepped foot in there. Court day finally rolled around. Carla walked in, but it wasn't the usual diva strut I'd gotten used to. No designer blazer, no smug grin, just her and her lawyer, looking about as confident as a pair of kids walking into detention. She must have known things weren't going to go her way. The energy was off, and honestly, I loved every second of it. On the other side, there I was with Steve, my lawyer. He came prepared, carrying a binder so thick it could have doubled as a doorstop. I wasn't nervous. At this point, I had nothing to lose. Carla had already thrown every punch she had, and I was still standing. Today was about making sure I didn't just survive this. I won. Her lawyer started by presenting her emotional compensation claim I told you about earlier, painting a picture of Carla as this long-suffering wife who had been emotionally drained by my lack of support for her personal growth. Apparently, my refusal to support her fitness journey, aka her affair with Justin, had been a form of neglect. Steve, my lawyer, let her lawyer go on for a while, allowing them to dig their own hole. Then, it was our turn. Steve started by systematically dismantling their argument. He showed evidence that I'd not only supported Carla, but had gone above and beyond during her so-called fitness journey. He presented proof that I'd taken over household chores, adjusted my work schedule, and even encouraged her to pursue her goals. He read aloud text messages where I offered to make her healthy meals, supported her gym sessions, and even suggested we attend couples fitness classes to strengthen our bond. Then, Steve dropped the bomb. Carla's emotional compensation claim wasn't just baseless. It was a blatant attempt to cover up her own emotional negligence. He presented emails and texts where Carla openly ridiculed me to her friends, calling me boring and dead weight. He even had screenshots of her bragging about Justin and calling me her backup plan. But the real nail in the coffin came when Steve addressed the financial aspect of Carla's claim. He presented our bank statements, showing how Carla had funneled thousands of dollars from our joint account into her luxury lifestyle. Carla's lawyer tried to push back, but Steve wasn't done. He unveiled the ultimate piece of evidence, a journal entry from Carla that Steve had subpoenaed. In it, Carla had written about her master plan to leave me, get everything she could out of this marriage, and use the settlement money to fund her new life with Justin. The judge's face when he read that? Pure disbelief. The courtroom was dead silent as the judge flipped through the paperwork, his stern expression growing heavier with each page. Carla sat next to her lawyer, visibly tense, her polished nails nervously drumming against the table. Her confidence, which she had flaunted so boldly in mediation, had evaporated into thin air. Across from her, I sat with Steve, my lawyer, feeling a mix of anticipation and satisfaction. This was it, the moment everything Carla had spun into her narrative would unravel. The judge began by addressing Carla's emotional compensation claim. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, his voice steady but firm, "your request for emotional compensation lacks any substantive evidence." He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "While emotional distress is a valid consideration in some cases, this court requires clear and demonstrable proof. Your claims are based on subjective feelings, not facts." He turned his attention to Steve's counter-arguments. He recounted the text messages, bank statements, and Instagram captions that painted a starkly different picture from the one Carla and her lawyer had tried to present. "Mr. Patterson," the judge said, addressing me for the first time, "you've demonstrated a clear and consistent pattern of support for your wife during the marriage. The evidence provided shows no indication of emotional neglect. In fact, it suggests the opposite. You went above and beyond to accommodate her needs and aspirations." Carla's lawyer tried to interject, stumbling over an objection that the evidence was taken out of context. The judge silenced him with a raised hand. "The context is clear, counselor. Let's move on." Next, the judge turned to the financial aspect of the case. He methodically reviewed the evidence Steve had presented. Mrs. Patterson, the judge said, his tone growing colder, you withdrew over $23,000 from your joint accounts in the period leading up to this divorce filing. These funds were not used for household expenses or shared needs. Instead, they were spent on luxury items, high-end dining, and personal indulgences. The court finds this behavior irresponsible and in direct violation of your marital financial obligations. Carla squirmed in her seat, her face flushing a deep red. Her lawyer attempted to downplay the spending, claiming it was part of her coping mechanism during a difficult time. The judge was unimpressed. Coping mechanisms do not justify financial recklessness, he said sharply. Then came the house. Carla had confidently argued she was entitled to half of it, claiming she had contributed emotionally, if not financially, to its upkeep. Steve was ready for this. He provided records showing I had paid the mortgage in full, maintained the property, and even handled renovations, all while Carla contributed nothing. The judge didn't mince words. The house will remain the property of Mr. Patterson, he declared. Mrs. Patterson, you have no financial claim to it based on the evidence presented. Carla's jaw dropped. Her lawyer whispered something in her ear, but she waved him off, too stunned to respond. The judge wasn't done. Furthermore, he continued, due to the unauthorized use of marital funds, Mrs. Patterson is ordered to reimburse Mr. Patterson in the amount of $23,750. You could have heard a pin drop. Carla's lawyer slumped in his chair, visibly defeated. Carla herself looked like someone had knocked the wind out of her. Her carefully curated narrative had collapsed in spectacular fashion, leaving her with nothing but the consequences of her actions. The ruling was final. No appeals, no loopholes. The judge closed his folder and said, "This court is adjourned." I leaned back in my chair, a wave of relief washing over me. Justice had been served, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. Leaving the courtroom, the tension in the air was palpable. Carla's lawyer was already packing up his briefcase, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Carla trailed behind him, her head hanging low. For someone who had strutted into this process with the confidence of a reality TV star, she now looked utterly defeated. Steve patted me on the back as we walked out. "We did it," he said with a small smile. I nodded, grateful for his work. He'd not only defended me but also exposed the truth behind Carla's manipulative tactics. As I exited the courthouse, I couldn't help but glance back at Carla. She was still standing there, staring blankly at the floor. For a brief moment, I felt a twinge of pity, but it quickly faded. She had orchestrated this chaos, and now she was facing the consequences. Over the next few days, the fallout of the ruling became glaringly obvious. Carla was ordered to vacate the house within 30 days, and I made sure to enforce it. She tried to stall, claiming she needed more time to get her affairs in order, but I didn't budge. I reminded her that she'd had plenty of time to prepare, while she was busy flaunting her affair with Justin. Begrudgingly, she packed up her things and moved out. Watching her leave that final day was oddly satisfying. She loaded her designer luggage into an old car, one of her friends had apparently loaned it to her, and drove off without so much as a goodbye. The house, once filled with tension and resentment, suddenly felt peaceful. Carla's financial situation spiraled quickly. Without access to my income or the marital funds she'd been draining, she was left to fend for herself. She tried to sell off some of her designer clothes and handbags, but it wasn't enough to cover the debt she owed me. Word got around that she was borrowing money from friends, who were quickly growing tired of her sob stories. As for Justin, he still vanished entirely. He didn't return her calls or messages. One night, about 2 weeks after the ruling, Carla showed up at the house unannounced. I opened the door to find her standing there, her once flawless appearance replaced by messy hair and tired eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Dave," she said softly, her voice cracking. "Can we talk?" I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "What do you want, Carla?" She hesitated, wringing her hands. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I made mistakes. Big ones. I let Justin manipulate me. I got caught up in this fantasy, and I ruined everything." Her words sounded rehearsed, but the desperation in her eyes was real. She wasn't here to apologize out of genuine remorse. She was here because she had nowhere else to turn. "I don't know what you expect me to say," I replied, my tone calm but firm. "You made your choices. You chose Justin. You chose to try and take everything from me. And now you're dealing with the fallout." Tears welled up in her eyes. Can't we at least be civil? Maybe start over? I have nothing, Dave. I'm lost." I stared at her for a moment, feeling nothing but resolve. "Carla, I gave you everything. My support, my trust, my love, and you threw it all away. You don't get to come back now and ask for a second chance." That's not how this works. She broke down, sobbing on my porch, but I didn't flinch. After a moment, I stepped back inside and closed the door, leaving her outside with her regrets. Since that day, I've moved on. As for Carla, I've heard through the grapevine that she's still struggling to get back on her feet. She's burned bridges, lost friends, and is now facing the reality of her own choices. Sometimes karma doesn't just knock on the door, it kicks it down. And for Carla, it left her with nothing but the consequences of her actions. Story 6. This story is titled, They Claimed I Wasn't Their Dad, so I stopped acting like one, took my truck and left, but now they're desperate to get me back. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Alright Reddit, never thought I'd be typing this out, but after spending the last 3 hours reading posts about stepdads getting screwed over, I figured maybe sharing my story might help some other poor bastard avoid the shit show I went through. Warning, this is going to be long AF and probably full of typos, because I'm running on zero sleep and typing this on my phone in my truck. I'm 41, male now. Been driving trucks since I was 23. Started with nothing but a CDL and a dream of owning my own rig someday. Worked my ass off, lived in that truck, saved every penny until I could buy my own Peterbilt. Was doing pretty good too. Had my own route, regular customers, even started building a decent savings. No wife, no kids, just me and my dog living the dream on the open road. Wasn't exactly killing it, but I had my shit together, you know? Owned my truck outright, had a small apartment I barely used, and enough extra cash to treat myself to a good steak dinner when I felt like it. Not bad for a guy who grew up in a trailer park with nothing. First off, you gotta understand how this whole mess started. It was 2015, and I was at PetSmart buying food for my German Shepherd Ghost. Normal Thursday afternoon, nothing special. Ghost was this big goofball I'd rescued a year before. Best decision I ever made, but that's pretty much the only good decision in this story, lol. So I'm there comparing prices on dog food, shit's expensive, right? When this kid literally slams into my legs at full speed. I mean, this little dude was booking it. Ghost, being the gentle giant he is, just starts wagging his tail like crazy. This kid, Liam, was like 4 or 5, all energy and no brakes. You know the type. He's wearing this Spider-Man t-shirt that's seen better days, and has this toy car clutched in his hand that he apparently thought could outrun my dog. Behind him comes this woman looking absolutely done with life, pushing a stroller with a baby in it. That was Mia and little Amy. Mia looked like one of those moms you see in movies who's trying to hold it together, but is one spilled sippy cup away from losing it. Dark circles under her eyes, messy bun, the whole attitude. I help Liam up. Kid's still giggling because Ghost is giving him the world's sloppiest kisses, and Mia starts apologizing like crazy. I'm so sorry, he's just so hyper today. Liam apologized to the nice man, etc., etc. But I'm just laughing because honestly, it was the most excitement I'd had all week. Being a trucker means a lot of lonely hours on the road, so random kid attacks are actually a nice change of pace, LMAO. Turns out they were there because Liam was begging for a pet snake. Hell no, according to Mia. And Amy needed to look at the fishies, or she wouldn't nap. We got to talking. You know how it goes. Making small talk while a hyperactive kid tries to convince your dog to be his new best friend. That's when I noticed her Marine Corps widow pin on her purse. Didn't say anything about it at first, but man, it explained a lot. Found out later her husband James died in Afghanistan about a year before. Real hero type. Bronze Star, the whole deal. Left behind a 4-year-old boy who could barely remember him, and a baby girl who'd never know him. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I didn't notice Mia was pretty. She was, but that's not what got me. It was watching her try so damn hard to keep it together. Like when Liam asked if the snake could sleep in Daddy's old room, and her voice cracked just a tiny bit when she said no. Or how she was counting out exact change for dog treats, because you could tell money was tight. Ghost sealed the deal, honestly. This dog, who usually takes forever to warm up to people, was letting Liam climb all over him like a jungle gym. Even little Amy in her stroller was giggling every time Ghost would gently lick her hand. Mia joked that it was the first time she'd seen Amy smile at a stranger in months. I did something stupid then. Offered to let them walk Ghost with me around the store, while we looked at pets they definitely weren't getting. Mia was firm on the no snake rule, and honestly, good call. Liam was over the moon, holding Ghost's leash, with me right there, obviously, and Mia actually relaxed a little. We ended up exchanging numbers. For doggy playdates, she said, half joking, but I think we both knew what was up. Looking back now, sitting in my truck with Ghost's gray muzzle on my lap, I wonder if he knew. That dog always was smarter than me. He loved those kids right away, but every time Mia came around, he'd get this look. Not growling, nothing aggressive, just watchful. Should have paid more attention to that. But you know what they say about hindsight being 20/20 and all that bullshit. Guess your dog can't protect you from your own stupid decisions, even if he tries. Anyway, those first few months after meeting Mia were, man, I don't even know how to describe them. Started with those doggy playdates we talked about. I'd bring Ghost to this little park near their apartment complex, and Liam would literally vibrate with excitement every time he saw us pull up in my truck. Kid loved that truck BTW. Thought it was the coolest thing ever that I drove a monster truck. It's just a regular Peterbilt, but try telling that to a 4-year-old LOL. Here's where I made my first mistake. Started adjusting my routes to be home more. Any trucker reading this knows that's basically throwing money away. But there I was, turning down good long-haul jobs to take local routes so I could be around for stuff like Liam's t-ball games and Amy's doctor appointments. Mia was struggling bad with money. Never asked directly for help, but you could see it. Apartment was always freezing in winter because she was saving on heat. Kids wearing clothes that were a bit too small. One time I noticed Liam's shoes were literally held together with duct tape. So yeah, I stepped in. What else was I gonna do? Bought Liam new shoes. Kid cried when I got him light-up ones. Fucking broke my heart. Started accidentally bringing over extra groceries. That kind of thing. Mia tried to refuse at first, but you try saying no when your kid's jumping around in his first new shoes in months. Got serious pretty quick after that. Started staying over more and more. Ghost loved it. Dog had 2 kids to play with and a bigger space to roam. I'd come back from shorter runs, and they'd all be there waiting. Even Amy started warming up to me. Went from crying whenever I got near her to demanding bedtime stories. First time Liam called me dad, I was under my truck doing maintenance. Kid was watching me work, handing me tools. Wrong ones usually, but hey, he was trying. Dropped a wrench on my finger and swore. He giggled and said, "Dad, you said a bad word, just casual," like he'd been calling me that forever. I played it cool, but man, inside I was a mess. Good mess, you know? Went out that weekend and bought one of those world's best dad mugs. Dumb, right? Still have it in my truck. Can't bring myself to throw it out. Mia and I got married about a year after meeting. Nothing fancy. Courthouse wedding because I had a delivery that afternoon. She didn't want a big thing anyway. Said her first wedding had been enough of a production. But I was too busy playing Superman to notice. Got a bigger place. Nice house with a yard for Ghost and the kids. Started a college fund for both kids. Separate accounts under my name, thank God. Worked my ass off to provide everything they needed, and most of what they wanted. You know what's funny? Other truckers used to give me shit about being whipped, missing out on the good routes, rushing home for dance recitals and parent-teacher conferences. But I was proud of it. Proud that Amy would FaceTime me to show off her art projects. Proud that Liam wanted me to teach him about engines. Proud when other parents at school events would say what a great dad I was. Ghost was living his best life too. Had his own spot on the couch, that Mia hated but tolerated. Followed the kids everywhere, even had playdates with the neighbors' dogs. But he never quite warmed up to Mia. Wouldn't growl or anything, just kept his distance. Wouldn't take treats from her. Wouldn't cuddle with her like he did with the kids. Should have paid attention to that. I started noticing little things about Mia too. How she'd introduce me as the kid's stepdad instead of her husband. How she kept a picture of James, her late husband, on her nightstand, but wouldn't put up any photos of our wedding. How she'd talk about James to anyone who'd listen, brave Marine, hero, perfect father, but would change the subject if anyone asked what I did for work. But hey, the kids seemed happy, house was paid for, and I had what I thought was a family. Ghost had his humans. I had my ready-made family. Life was good. Now, remember how I said Liam was this sweet kid who thought my truck was the coolest thing ever? Yeah, well, teenagers are a whole different ballgame. When he hit 17, it's like first time I noticed something was really wrong was when I got back from a 3-day run. I'd busted my ass to make it home for his football game, even turned down a better paying route to be there. Walk in the door, Ghost running to greet me like always, and I hear Liam talking to his friends in the kitchen. Nah, my real dad was a Marine. Won a Bronze Star and everything. This guy's just my mom's husband. I felt like someone slapped me on the face. This was the same kid who used to beg me to take him to the truck yard, who'd sit in my rig for hours while I taught him about engines. Now suddenly I'm just my mom's husband? But it got worse. Amy, 14 by then, started copying everything her brother did. Eye rolls, heavy sighs whenever I walked into a room, the works. One time I asked her to clean up her mess in the kitchen. You'd think I'd asked her to donate a kidney or something. Why should I? You're not my real dad. There it was. That fucking phrase. Started hearing it more and more. Every time I tried to set any kind of rules or boundaries, you're not my real dad. Every time I tried to help with homework or give advice, you're not my real dad. I started to feel like it was their new favorite song or something. And Mia, she just checked out. Always on her phone, always too busy to deal with it. One time I actually heard her on the phone with her friend, laughing about how the kids were just going through a phase and how they obviously missed their real father. Real father? They don't even remember him. Like I hadn't been the one there for every fucking thing for the past 8 years. The worst part? I started noticing how Mia would talk about me to her friends. Oh, he's on the road a lot. Or he drives trucks, always said in this apologetic tone, like she was embarrassed. Meanwhile, she'd talk about James, dead husband, like he hung the moon. James was a war hero, and James would have wanted this and that. Even started affecting my relationship with Ghost. Used to be, he'd sleep in the kids' room sometimes. They'd fight over who got him each night. Now they'd push him away, say their friends were coming over, and they didn't want dog hair everywhere. Only time they paid attention to him was when they needed something from me. Amazing how they'd suddenly become dog lovers when they wanted money or favors. But then, I started finding out about all these family things I wasn't invited to. Mia's family reunions, school events, even just dinners out. They'd wait until I was on a run, then go do family stuff without me. Would see the pictures on Mia's Facebook later, them all smiling, having fun, being a real family while I was out earning the money that paid for it all. One night, I confronted Mia about it. She just looked at me with this pity, like I was some dumb truck driver who didn't understand how things worked. They're teenagers, they need space. And you're gone so much anyway. Yeah, gone busting my ass to pay for their private school, their phones, their cars, because apparently my truck wasn't good enough for them to be seen in anymore. Gone working extra routes to afford the lifestyle they'd gotten used to. It was like watching something rot from the inside out. On the surface, everything looked fine. Nice house, nice cars, kids in good schools. But underneath, it was all going to shit. Ghost knew. He'd started doing this thing where he'd put his head on my lap whenever I was home, just staring at me with those knowing dog eyes, like he was trying to tell me something. But I wasn't ready to listen yet. But then, things went from bad to worse. Like, my tools would go missing from the garage. Not just misplaced, straight up gone. Liam used to help me maintain my truck, knew exactly which tools I needed most. Funny how those were always the ones that disappeared. Then my truck started having issues. Nothing major at first. Scratch here, dent there. Could have been anything, right? But then one morning, I came out to find my fuel tank cap unscrewed. Not loose, completely unscrewed and sitting on top. Anyone who knows trucks knows how dangerous that could have been if I hadn't caught it. So I installed a security camera in the yard after that. Guess what I saw on the footage? Our precious boy Liam, 2 a.m., messing with my truck. When I showed Mia the video, you know what she said? Well, maybe if you were home more, he wouldn't act out like this. Yeah, that's when I started keeping receipts for everything. Every repair, every replacement tool, every single thing I paid for. My lawyer says that turned out to be the smartest thing I could have done. But here's where it really went sideways. Amy, my little girl who used to beg for bedtime stories, she started dating this college guy. Tim or Tom or whatever. Real piece of work. Trust fund baby type who drove a BMW his daddy bought him. Didn't think much of it at first. Not my business who she dates, right? Then I noticed she's not wearing the necklace I got her for her 16th birthday anymore. The one she swore she'd never take off. Found out later she told her friends it was embarrassing because it came from a truck stop. It was from Tiffany's, by the way. Worked overtime for 2 months to afford it. One night, I'm at home between routes, and I hear Amy and Mia talking in the kitchen. Amy's going on about how Tom's family has this big Christmas party coming up. Really fancy affair. Mom, what do I tell them about Dad? My ears perk up, thinking maybe, just maybe, she's worried about explaining her stepdad's job. Nope. Just tell them what I always do, honey. That your father was a Marine who died serving his country. Didn't even lower their voices. Didn't care if I heard. I was sitting right there in the living room with Ghost, and they just acted like I didn't exist. Ghost growled. First time I'd ever heard him growl at family. Mia jumped, tried to play it off with a laugh. Oh, that dog's getting so moody in his old age. Nah, Mia. Ghost just finally stopped pretending, same as me. But the final straw is when I found out they had a whole-ass Thanksgiving dinner while I was on a run. Not just them, Mia's whole family, some of the kids' friends, even a few neighbors. Saw the pictures on Facebook. They'd set up in my backyard, used my grill that I hadn't been allowed to use in months because the smoke bothers Amy's allergies, and acted like one big happy family. And the caption under the photo said, "So thankful for family. Missing James extra hard today." I was out there driving through a fucking snowstorm to deliver emergency supplies, missing my family, and they're playing house pretending I don't exist. I had enough that night, sleeping in my truck with Ghost. Didn't even bother going inside when I got home. I started making plans. Called my buddy Rich, who's a lawyer. Started gathering documents. Took screenshots of everything, but I still wasn't ready to pull the trigger. Still thought maybe there was something worth saving. What a fucking idiot I was. But you know what's funny about life? Just when you think things can't get more fucked up, the universe finds a way to prove you wrong. That day started normal enough. Just finishing up a long haul from California, looking forward to surprising Amy for her 21st birthday. Didn't know I was the one in for a surprise. So I was pushing through because Amy's birthday was coming up, and even though things were shit, I still wanted to be there. Had this whole thing planned, was gonna surprise her, had a Tiffany bracelet I'd been saving up for months to buy her, got home early for once. It's like 6 p.m., sun's still up. I see all these cars parked around our house. Nice ones, BMWs, Mercedes, that kind of shit. Figured maybe Mia was having one of her fancy friend gatherings she never invited me to. Ghost starts acting weird the moment we pull up. Normally he's excited to get home, but this time he's just tense. Should have listened to him right then and there. I go around back because that's where all the noise is coming from. And there it is. Full-blown party in my backyard. Catering, fancy dresses, the works. And right in the middle of it all is Amy, holding hands with Trust Fund Tom. It was a whole engagement party that they didn't tell me about. But here's the thing that really got me. I'm standing there, gift box in my hand, and I hear this old lady, Tom's grandmother found out later, asking about Amy's family. "Oh, what does your father do, dear?" Now, I'm thinking maybe, just maybe, after all these years, Amy might acknowledge me. Shit, even my stepdad's a truck driver would have been something. Amy, wearing this fancy designer dress that I know Mia couldn't afford, looks this old lady right in the eye and says, "My father was a Marine. He died in Afghanistan when I was a baby. He was a hero." Mia's standing right there, nodding along, proud as can be. And then she adds, "James would be so proud of the woman Amy's become. He always wanted her to marry well." Marry well. Like being a working man who provided for their family for 15 years wasn't well enough. Then Tom's dad starts talking about the wedding plans. Big church wedding, country club reception, all that fancy shit. Then he says something about father of the bride traditions. Amy doesn't even hesitate. "Oh, my Uncle Steve, Mia's brother, will be standing in for my dad. He was my dad's best friend in the Marines." Fucking Steve, who I've literally never seen contribute a damn thing to Amy's life except showing up drunk to Christmas and telling war stories about James. I must have made some kind of noise because Ghost lets out this low whine. That's when they finally notice me standing there. The look on Amy's face, not shame, not guilt, just annoyance. Like I'd ruined her perfect moment by existing. Mia tries to play it off. "Oh, Jacob, you're home early. We were just..." But I'm not listening anymore. I'm looking at my house, my backyard, the party being paid for with my money. Found out later Mia used my credit card for the catering. Celebrating my daughter's engagement, and I'm not even supposed to exist. The bracelet box feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds in my hand. Ghost is pressed against my leg, doing that thing where he's trying to protect me, but also comfort me at the same time. Tom's mom, trying to be polite I guess, asked who I am. Before anyone can answer, I just turn around and walk away. Get in my truck, Ghost jumps in, and we leave. Spent the night at a truck stop about 50 miles away, just sitting there with Ghost, both of us staring at nothing. That night I called Rich, my lawyer buddy, told him it's time. He just said, "Finally. I've had the papers ready for months." Honestly, after that engagement party bullshit, something in me just broke, or maybe fixed itself, depending how you look at it. Spent that whole night in my truck with Ghost, going through old photos on my phone, pictures of Liam's first baseball game, Amy's dance recitals, all that family stuff I thought we had. But here's something most people don't get about trucking. It's not just some dude driving a big rig down the highway. It's a fucking business. Contracts, accounts, assets, the whole 9 yards. And while Mia and the kids were busy looking down their noses at the simple trucker, I was running that business like a goddamn CEO. That house they were living in my name. The cars they drove, my name. The credit cards Mia used to pay for that fancy engagement party? All in my name. Even the utilities were under my company's name because of some tax thing Rich set up years ago. But I played it cool, kept driving my routes, kept paying the bills, kept acting like nothing was wrong. Even sat through dinner one night where Amy and Mia were talking about wedding venues that cost more than my first truck. Just nodded along, playing the dumb trucker they thought I was. Meanwhile, Rich and I went through everything. Bank statements, property titles, credit card bills, all of it. Found some interesting shit too. Like how Mia had been writing checks to her brother Steve, you know, the stand-in dad, from my business account. Or how Liam had been using my credit card to buy parts for his car that somehow ended up on his friend's ride. The best part? Mia never signed any prenup, but she also never put her name on anything important. She thought not taking my last name meant she was keeping her independence or some shit. Actually meant she had no legal claim to my assets. Rich laughed his ass off when he realized that. You know what really gets me though? While all this is going down, they're still acting like I'm the bad guy. Liam's still messing with my truck. Caught him on camera again, trying to sugar the gas tank this time. Amy's still playing the poor, fatherless bride card to Tom's family. And Mia's still running her mouth to anyone who'll listen about how her first husband was such a hero. One night, I'm sitting in my study doing paperwork, running my own fleet now. Got 2 other drivers working for me. And I hear them in the kitchen. They're laughing about something, and Mia goes, well, at least the wedding will be paid for. It's not like he knows how to hide money. He's just a trucker. Ghost, who'd basically moved into my study with me at this point, looks up at me like, you hearing this shit, Dad? I just patted his head and kept working on transfer paperwork with Rich. What they didn't know is that I'd been moving money around for months. Legal-like, all above board. Rich made sure of that. But strategic. Setting up new accounts, redirecting business income, canceling credit cards, and creating new ones they didn't know about. Even started a whole new LLC for my growing fleet. The day everything was ready, I took Ghost for a long walk. Had to think about what I was about to do. Wasn't just about revenge. It was about taking back what was mine. My dignity. My self-respect. My life. You know what finally convinced me? Saw Amy showing off her engagement ring to her friends in the backyard. Big fancy thing that probably cost more than most people make in a month. She's going on about how she's finally going to have a real family once she marries Tom. That night, I made one last call to Rich. Do it. The plan we'd spent months putting together was finally going into motion. And let me tell you something about patience. You ever watch one of those nature documentaries where a predator just waits patiently, letting their prey think everything's fine until the perfect moment to strike? That was me that Tuesday morning. Told Mia I was heading out for a 3-day run the night before. She probably thought I was off being a good little trucker, earning more money for precious Amy's wedding. Hell, Liam was probably already planning what part of my rig to fuck with next. What they didn't know? I was parked just an hour away at my buddy's yard, watching everything unfold through the security cameras I'd installed. And boy, what a show it was. The lawyer Rich timed everything perfectly. The courier showed up right as Mia was having her morning coffee. 3 thick envelopes, each one a different kind of fuck you. Should have seen her face when she opened that first package. Divorce papers. But not just any divorce papers. We're talking a whole goddamn manuscript of their bullshit. Security footage of Liam's little vandalism hobby. Bank statements showing Mia treating my business account like her personal piggy bank. Screenshots of Amy talking shit about me online while flashing the designer crap I paid for. All of it, documented and notarized. Then came the eviction notice. Mia always acted so high and mighty about keeping her independence, not taking my last name. Never once bothered to check if her name was on the house deed, though. Funny how that works out. But the cherry on top? That 3rd envelope. Watching her face as she realized every credit card was canceled, every joint account closed, every asset transferred. All perfectly legal, all documented, all gone. Like watching someone realize they've been playing poker with a marked deck, and they just lost everything. The meltdown was biblical. First came Mia's calls, screaming about the wedding and the house and how I couldn't do this to them. Then Liam, trying to act tough about the credit cards like he had any fucking right to them after what he did to my truck. Finally, Amy. Real waterworks about her special day being ruined, how Tom's family would think they're trash. Not one word about the years I spent being her dad. Not one "I'm sorry" in sight. Mia tried running to her fancy lawyer friends, but turns out they're not so friendly when they realize their client doesn't have a legal leg to stand on. No joint accounts, no joint property, not even a claim to that overpriced furniture she loved to show off to her friends. All bought with business accounts, all mine. Then Mia's brother Steve shows up. probably thinking he's gonna play tough guy. Remember Steve? The stand-in dad for Amy's wedding? Yeah, he wasn't so tough when my lawyer's associate served him with a cease and desist and a restraining order. Turns out threatening someone who keeps receipts isn't such a smart move. By sunset, Mia's crying to anyone who'll listen, Amy's playing victim on social media, and Liam's still making threats about my truck. Thanks for the written evidence, genius. But here's the best part. I made sure everyone knew why. Rich helped me put together a nice little information package for all their fancy friends in Tom's family. Everything laid out nice and neat. The vandalism, the theft, the lies about being a grieving military family while living off my work. Even threw in some choice recordings of them mocking my job. Tom's family? Old money types, real proper. They didn't take too kindly to finding out their future in-laws were a bunch of grifters. That fancy country club wedding suddenly got fucked up. The next few days I got hundreds of messages, threats, begging, guilt trips, you name it. I didn't answer a single one. Just sat in my truck with Ghost, watching karma do its thing through my phone screen. Drove by the house a week later, moving trucks in the driveway. Guess reality's a bitch when it finally shows up. Now sitting here by the lake where Ghost and I used to take the kids fishing. Ghost's sprawling out in the grass next to my chair, probably dreaming about chasing rabbits or stealing my breakfast sandwich like he did this morning. Been a year since everything went down, and sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed. Funny thing about hitting rock bottom, once you start climbing back up, you realize maybe you needed the fall to appreciate the view. Take my business, for example. Remember those 2 drivers I mentioned? Now there's 6 of us, all running solid routes, all trucks paid for. Amazing what you can do with your money when it's not being bled dry by people who see you as an ATM with legs. Couldn't keep the old house, though. Too many ghosts, and I don't mean the 4-legged kind. Found a smaller place near my truck yard instead. Got a big fenced yard where he can run, a garage where I can work on my trucks in peace, and most importantly, no drama walking through the door every night. People keep asking me about them. Guess everyone loves a good train wreck, right? Mia ended up moving in with her hero brother Steve. Funny how his heroic spirit dried up when she actually needed help. Last I heard, she's answering phones at some dental office. Turns out, just a trucker wasn't such a bad provider after all. Liam's working at his uncle's tire shop now. College wasn't so appealing once daddy's money stopped flowing. Kind of ironic, kid who thought manual labor was beneath him is now changing tires for a living. Life's got a sense of humor, I'll give it that. And Amy? That fairy tale wedding crashed and burned. Trust fund. Tom's family had some concerns about their precious son marrying into a family with questionable values. Their words, not mine. They offered to bankroll a smaller ceremony, but Princess wouldn't have it. She's slinging plates at some chain restaurant now, living back with Mia. That Tiffany bracelet I bought for her birthday? Sold it. Got Ghost an orthopedic bed instead. Best trade I ever made. The messages still come sometimes. Mia's essays about how I destroyed the family go straight to Rich's evidence folder. Amy tried the I miss you dad routine on my birthday. Funny how that word only matters when they need something. Liam? Radio silence. Good. You know what's weird though? I don't feel anything for them anymore. No hate, no love, just nothing. But life keeps rolling. Fleet's growing. Got good people working with me who actually respect what we do. Got a date next weekend too. Owns a diner on one of my regular routes. She's got her own business, her own life, and get this. She actually thinks what I do is something to be proud of. Ghost gave her the paw of approval, which is really all the review I need. And you know what? After all this, I realized something important. Being a provider doesn't make you a father, and being a father doesn't mean being a doormat. Sometimes the family you think you're building is just a house of cards. And sometimes, Ghost just dropped his ball in my lap for the 100th time. The only family you need is the one that's been lying at your feet all along. Ghost is giving me that look now. The one that says, enough with the heavy stuff, Dad. Let's play. Think I'll take his advice. After all, he's been right about everything else. Edit 1. Ghost says thanks for all the love. He's currently snoring in his fancy new bed, living his best life. Final edit. To everyone fighting their own battles, it gets better. Keep your dignity, document everything, and never let anyone shame you for honest work. Ghost and I have an early route tomorrow, so we're signing off. Remember, sometimes losing a fake family is worth finding yourself.